Hello one and all, and welcome to a very special episode of my deep dives into Dimension 20. What's different about this one is it is a compilation of all 10 deep dives I have done over the past 2 years. When I started doing these 2 years ago, my original plan was I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to watch every Dimension 20 video and release like a 3-hour, 4-hour long spectacular of deep diving into every single one. And then I quickly realized I was never going to catch up to Dimension 20. So I made the decision that every 10 episodes I was going to release a ultimate deep dive that was a compilation of all of those. Well, here I am 2 years later, finally able to show you, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you everybody that has been tuning into those. They're my favorite content to make. In this video, there will be a few things here and there that are a little bit different than you have seen previously. Just to keep it interesting, I don't want you just watching the same old thing that you already watched from me. And if this is your first time here, hello, welcome to my channel. I'm so happy to have you here. But without further ado,
Dimension 20 proudly presents Fantasy High!
So Dimension 20, like I said, is the show on Dropout with the DM Brennan Lee Mulligan, who's quickly become, and I'm not using hyperbole here, one of my all-time favorite people ever.
You are a sick son of a bitch!
Gonna kill that dog.
Oh my God, you're a sick son of a bitch! He's the bad guy! You!
I'm all the bad guys.
He's an absolute blast, he's hilarious, but on top of that, he's just a fucking phenomenal DM. Like, he pulls shit off as a DM that when I think about DMing, all I want to do is mimic that style, and that really makes a great DM, and I want to play in a game of his, and I'll get into more of what makes him so good later on in this episode, but I just wanted to start off the bat here and say right away just how fucking great Brennan Lee Mulligan is as a DM and how hilarious and good at improv he is, and that really extends to all the people in this campaign, in the Intrepid Heroes. I haven't gotten any of the side quests yet, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The first campaign that we have is Fantasy High, which takes place in kind of a fantasy-ish world that's a meld of fantasy and modern day life. Rhea follows 6 teenagers played by the characters in this show that are going to like an explorer's high school where they learn how to go off and be adventurers in the fantasy world. And it's kind of like a coming of age story melded with fantasy. And it's a really cool, kind of quirky campaign that I never would have thought of. What really sets Dimension 20 and Fantasy High apart for me, though, when it comes to the campaign, when you're comparing it to all other campaigns that I've watched, and I'm not bad-mouthing anybody here. I'm gonna say Critical Role because that's the most commonly other known big campaign and Dungeons and Dragons content out there, but I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just comparing the two, and my preference is Dimension 20 because whereas Critical Role does a kind of live on-the-spot campaign which has its merits and is a lot of fun, this is a very highly produced campaign where every other episode is combat, so when they get to the combat, when they have like a full 2-hour episode of an encounter, they have these amazing sets and miniatures, and it's just this perfect little scenario. And I imagine when I watch these that Brennan kind of has an idea of what he wants the next combat to be, but they end it right before combat in every single episode because they aren't 100% sure what the combat's going to be and who's going to be there and what miniatures they need and what scenario is going to play out. So they need a week to build these just beautiful sets that are so immersive. From the very beginning with the first set, when they're fighting the little corn cobs and the fucking disgusting goop monster, and they're all tripping over tables and laughing, but in the end they die, and they have the amazing revival sequence.
Life for a life. Hey, Mr. Gibbons. You see Mr. Gibbons goes up and says, I'm sorry, what? And you see that Principal Eggfort takes out a gun and shoots Mr. Gibbons in the head. And then takes the gun and says, the price must be paid. Bam! And shoots himself in the head. Gorgog and Kristen, you come back to life.
What the fuck?
In the last encounter, when they're fighting a dragon that basically takes up the entire table that they're playing on, every single one of these sets is beautiful. They have one scenario where they're fighting a bunch of teenage dwarf skaters in like an abandoned mining factory, and it's just fucking gorgeous, and I can't get enough of it. And it makes it difficult to watch any other campaigns or any other Dungeons & Dragons content when you've been spoiled to the level that Dimension 20 and Fantasy High has. On top of that, you have amazing art that is placed over the screen when you meet new characters to kind of show you what they look like. You have great sound effects. There's a motorcycle that is kind of possessed that becomes obsessed with one of the characters in this called the Hangman, that every single time Brennan Lee Mulligan makes the Hangman talk in this like low gravelly voice that he does. You also hear like a motorcycle revving in the background.
Allow me to redeem myself in your eyes.
It all comes together to make a beautifully immersive experience that brings you in that I've never seen in any other D&D content before. Kind of going to try to describe what happens at Fantasy High, but I'm going to be honest, as much as I love it and as much as it's compelling, I do struggle a little bit with the storyline. And that's to be expected. That's kind of why I like this so much, because when I laugh harder because all of it's improv. When I'm impressed by a story beat or a monologue, I'm impressed more and moved more because I know it is all on the spot and none of it is pre-planned. But it also makes for kind of a messy story arc when you have a DM that's trying to tell a story but doesn't want to railroad his players in the campaign. So you kind of understand why the story is a little bit muddy. But basically you have these 6 people, these 6 kids that go to school. Fabian Seacaster, Fig Faith, Gorgug Thistlespring, Aiden Abernack, Kristen Applebee's, and Riz Gutgak. And there's this story of these girls that are going missing at this school. And Riz, who one of the girls that went missing was his old babysitter and childhood friend, at least in his eyes. He's going there to solve the mystery, and kind of everybody gets pulled into this, and it ends up being a story that involves a cult of corn god worshippers and ends with a demon that's trying to escape the forced servitude by the principal of the school that is masquerading as the vice principal. Major spoilers there. Maybe I'll put a little thing on before this. And he just wants to get out to have his hordes of money and to take over as the ruler.
The time is now for a new age of fire and conquest and money, money, money for me, rich once more.
Everything that Brennan Lee Mulligan does, eventually the big bad guy at the end is late-stage capitalism. If you watch enough of Brennan Lee Mulligan campaigns, you'll realize that the bad guy is just always late-stage capitalism and monetary greed of some kind.
Look, if Brennan's the DM, the bad guy is capitalism. And I don't know how the bad guy is capitalism in Fairy Tale Land, but I am confident that he will have found a way.
I'm not complaining. The best bad guy is always capitalism. I'm kind of in agreement here. It's just hilarious that you can see it from the very beginning with Fantasy High, with a demon that just wants his gold out from his bank. So this is the very first campaign. So in this we meet what becomes known as our intrepid heroes, which Dimension 20 kind of operates on full-size campaigns like Fantasy High, Unsleeping City, A Crown for Candy, A Starstruck Odyssey, and Never After. Each one of these campaigns is like 16 to 20 episodes, and then you have smaller side quests that doesn't have the main group that is always in those main campaigns that are more like 6 episodes, and they have guest stars in them. One of them, actually, Brendan Lee Mulligan wasn't the DM in, and I'm really looking forward to get to that one. But our intrepid heroes are Emily Axford, Zach Oyama, Siobhan Thompson, Lou Wilson, Allie Beardsley, and Brian Murphy. And again, I'm not going to badmouth any other D&D content or campaigns out there, but I will say what I really appreciate about this group is they're all comedians. They all have a improv background. They're all incredibly close friends. They've been working together for over a decade. So not only do they have amazing chemistry, but they're so good in this setting where they just have to yes and each other all the time.
Let him use your computer, man.
Let him use
No,
your computer.
No, nobody just gets to use my computer because you
There's
have
a bunch of
texting
porn
device.
on there.
No, there's not
There's
a bunch of porn on there. There's not a bunch of porn on there.
There's
Nobody
a
goes to
weird
get
porn.
my
This
computer.
is so much
Right?
fun.
I searched
Yo
porn
ho
on
ho!
it.
Accessing pornography.
Stop! Stop! Pause! Pause! Everyone, look away! Look away! Do not
That's what it is.
Do not
Bullshit,
computer! Pause! I'm not
Shut
into
the
this.
blinds.
Stop! This is my father's stuff.
Private, tear me a new one. Wow.
To get to the same place in the story. You see moments throughout Fantasy High where one of them is trying to get the story to go a certain place and the rest of them realize it can go along. You see it in the very first episode. In a D&D campaign, you need these characters to have a natural way to get together. They can't be forced together or it's not going to be good story-wise. And in the very first episode, you have Lou Wilson's character punching Zach Oyama's character in the stomach to prove a point that he's going to be the biggest and best guy in the school. And they both get detention because Zach Oyama's character fights back.
And I say, hey, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. It's my first day. I guess it's everyone's first day.
Oh, it's your first day.
Do you want this metal flower?
I swing and hit him as fucking hard in the face as I possibly fucking can. And then I turn and I say, I'm Fabian Seacaster, son of Bill Seacaster, and I'm here to be great.
And then everybody realizes after that happens, oh, the way for us all to get together is to all get detention. So throughout the episode, they're all just kind of getting their own reason to get detention. And that leads on this whole story of these people being known as the bad kids in season 1 and season 2. And that's kind of what this group is known as after that. But you never would have gotten that great moment if you didn't have these people that are so naturally good at improv and going with each other on something without needing to be said anything. Moving back to Brennan Lee Mulligan, a lot of that can also be contributed to a phenomenal DM. Brennan Lee Mulligan is a great DM. If you've watched Game Changer or Actually, you know the kind of energy he brings to something like this. And you know the fact that he can spout just a fucking phenomenal monologue off just the top of the dome.
Icarus flying too close to the sun. But it seems Daedalus, our little master crafter over here, had some wax wings of his own, didn't he? Wanted to see his son fall from the sky. Oh, how close to the sun he flew. Well, I'm not having it. I've solved your labyrinth, puzzle master. The Minotaurs escaped, and you're gonna get the horns, buddy.
And he's got like 3 of those in every single episode of Fantasy High and Dimension 20 as a whole. But beyond that, he also just adapts the story so well. You have so many characters that is obvious were just meant to be throwaways. The one that comes to mind is his character Jawbone that was just a werewolf bouncer at a shitty club they were going to, and they got talking to him and were like, hey, we got an opening in our school for a lunch lad and a guidance counselor. And then in the next game, in the next week, he's the new guidance counselor at the school and he gets his life around. And then in the next season, he gets together with Fig's mother and they have a relationship and it just becomes this like main character with an amazing background. And that's not an uncommon thing. We have so many different characters and stories like that that are clearly just adapted on the spot and blown out. And that's what makes this world so immersive is these little characters that end up mattering and scenarios that make sense and everything being described so well when it's so obvious that it wasn't pre-planned. And when all that comes together, you get an amazing story about capitalistic greed and the meshing of real world and fantasy world, 80s rom-coms and coming of age stories, and you get amazing side bits and improv characters in this beautiful world. You get bits in this like some of my favorite bits within this are Zach Oyama as Gorgug asking everybody if he's gonna be his dad.
You're not proud of this. But you've been struggling with this for so long that momentarily it occurs to you that there's a possibility, however slim, that you are your own dad.
Why did you stop playing, dude?
Am I my own dad?
You get Fig Faith's 2 dads where she constantly having father problems. She hates her like what she thought was her biological dad but isn't. Galir, who is just this very, very sad, depressing disappointment of a man, but in a very hilarious way. And also her real dad, Gorthalax, the Insatiable, a literal demon that becomes one of the best characters in this and an amazing role model, right alongside Jawbone, the ex-drug dealer, turned guidance counselor, 3 father figures in her life, and everybody else in this has immense father problems. That's like uniting around everybody, so they all kind of decided, oh, we all have daddy issues. And then you have the halflings in this that are ride or die, down with the 5-0, fuck the pigs, let's make some fucking bacon kind of halflings.
I don't know what you kids are up to, but I do know one thing. Laws are threats made by the dominant socioeconomic ethnic group in a given nation. It's just a promise of violence that's enacted, and police are basically an occupying army. You know what I mean? You guys want to make some bacon?
And they're sick as fuck, and every time they show up, it just reminds me of what makes Brennan Lee Mulligan so funny within this story, and why I'm so captured by Fantasy High in Dimension 20 as, let's be fucking honest, an amazing TV show. And then at the end of this season, you get an amazing wrap-up with the final episode. Everybody has to make a choice between saving their family or not trying to save their family, and they have to roll dice to see how bad something happens. And for the most part, everything turns out okay, except Fabian Lou loses his dad, and it's a very touching moment. And honestly, in this episode, I was almost brought to tears by Dungeons and Dragons because everything was so fucking edge of my seat compelling, and it always is in this show. I'm always on the edge of my seat, and I'm just the laughter is kind of like this relief from being on the edge of my seat so much and compelled by the story. But I was almost brought to tears when Fabian's dad, Bill Seacaster, his papa, died by his own doing. It was all wrapped up very, very nicely. All the loose ends were tied up. And then when season 2 came along, I was really excited to find out that there was a season 2. And I'm slowly working my way through it. But unfortunately, at least in my opinion, season 2 was completely done as a live stream. So it's not as buttoned up enough. There's not the same amount of effects. There's no art overlays. There's no miniatures, unfortunately, which is some of the best parts of Fantasy High in Dimension 20 as a whole. And on top of that, it's 55 fucking hours of content. And I'm listening to it just in purely audio form at work. And I already listened to a shit ton of podcasts. So I'll get through it eventually. But I've also just moved on to Unsleeping City, which is already phenomenal. That'll be the next thing I talk about. I love this. I'm so happy I found it. This isn't an ad, but Dropout's only $5 a month, and it's insanely worth it. I've barely consumed anything other than Dropout content in Dimension 20 in the past like month and a half since I've been fucking obsessed with this show. Now in this season of Dimension 20, the Unsleeping City, we are set in kind of a magical version of New York City that is hidden behind the real New York City that can only be seen by archetypes and magical folk alike. It is a much more modern setting with different characters that you would normally find in Dungeons and Dragons, like paladins, being seen as more just virtuous firefighters and people. One of the characters in this is a cleric, and rather than praying to a god, he gets his powers from New York City and the people in it as a whole. And it is just all around kind of a cool campaign when you think about the fact that you're not used to seeing a modern setting imagined this way for Dungeons & Dragons. This season with the Intrepid Heroes, we have Pete the Plug, played by Allie Beardsley, Sophia Bicicleta, played by Emily Axford, Ricky Matsui, played by Zach Oyama, Kingston Brown, played by Lou Wilson, Cugrash, played by Brian Murphy, and Misty Moore, played by Siobhan Thompson. One of the things that I love about the Unsleeping City is that all of these characters have a wide array of personalities and ages and reasons for doing things, and spectrum of good to evil, if you want to call it that. Whereas you come from Fantasy High and everybody is like 15, 16, 17 years old. In this, you have a wide array. You have Pete the Plug, played by Allie Beardsley, who is this young transgender man who is trying to get out of the drug game, to only find out that he had an important role to play in the magical world that he didn't even know about until just recently. And then you have Kingston Brown, a long-standing member of New York City, a nurse at one of the hospitals that is one of the central people in the magical foundation of New York City, drawing his power from the people of New York himself and being what is called the Vox Populi to Pete the Plug's Vox Phantasma, to pieces of this magical universe that together kind of control the magic and the people around them. But then on the other end of the spectrum, even though those two are wildly different, you have Cugrash, a rat person that was turned into a rat because he was a rat bastard in real life.
It's fine, fuck me. Go, goddamn it. You stupid kid, go. You goddamn beautiful boy. You fucker. You absolute asshole.
And a witch that he screwed over turned him into a rat to represent his personality, and he lives in the sewers and helps the homeless people. Then you have Ricky Matsui, the paladin I was talking about, an incredibly good and sexy firefighter man that just wants to put the people before himself and is also a little bit simple-minded, but very, very wholesome.
If we're all admitting secrets, I wasn't always a firefighter.
Okay, there's no way this is...
I was in high school, and then after high school, I became a firefighter.
That's not a secret, that's just a normal life.
You have Misty Moore, a fairy that is reliving the same life over and over again, pretending to be a new actress when she gets too old and reincarnating into a different skin, and is staying alive through the love that she is siphoning off of the people of New York that love her. Then you have Sophia Bicicleta, a supposed recent widower that came into special monk powers and is just trying to get over her late husband and kick some ass at the same time. Now, while each one of these characters have very important roles within this, the Vox Populi and Vox Phantasma, played by Lou and Allie, playing Kingsley and Pete, are easily the two most important characters within this because they represent the foundation of magic within New York City and the Unsleeping City, which is like the upside down flipped version that only the magic people can see around New York. And then I said that it has been a long time since both a Vox Populi and a Vox Phantasma have been active in New York, and that is why all of these fucked up things are going on around them. Now, as far as the plot of the campaign, like I said with Fantasy High, I have a general idea. I watched very carefully. I loved this show. But it's kind of difficult sometimes to follow the plots of these Dungeons & Dragons things because the plots are all over because it's a lot of improv and Brennan has kind of an idea of where he wants to go with it, but then the Intrepid Heroes do something insane, so it goes another direction. But basically there's this big baddie, Robert Moses, that is trying to harness all of the power and magic within New York City for himself to make his dream, the American dream, come to life for him to rule over all the magical people and New York itself without being known as a magic person. He is using the vampires and Santa's list and siphoning the magic and trying to get the Vox Populi and Phantasma on his side. He is trying to take over Nod, the dream environment.
It makes no damn sense. Compels me, though.
It is very, very deep. Like I said, this season of Dimension 20 is a lot deeper than Fantasy High, but it is kind of a welcome change from the whimsy of Fantasy High. But that is not to say there isn't some moments of levity within this, because although this is very, very dark, very quickly I want to talk about the moments that each of these characters have in their past and in their present time that make it very dark. Kingston Brown is divorced because the woman that he fell in love with did not possess any magic, and after he introduced her to the magical environment, she wanted to go out and pursue her career and have his career pursued, but he was like, no, I have to stay here in New York. I'm the Vox Populi. I have to stay here. And she left him for that. Sophia Bicicleta, like I said, is a widower, but only to be found out that her husband was killed because he was part of this magical world and he was trying to be basically the chosen one.
Sweetie, I know this is hard and we don't have time. I'm not alive anymore.
That's really fucked up.
I'm sorry that I left. You know it wouldn't have been my choice. I'm so sorry.
Pete has a drug problem and his family has not accepted his transition, and he is just struggling to find himself and know where he belongs in the world and get out of the drug trade and be accepted. Cugrash used to be an actual human man, but he was an absolutely horrible human man. Like I said, a rat, and he got turned into a rat by a witch and has to live out the rest of his days as a rat living in the sewers. He also screwed over his family, and his oldest son absolutely despises him. Misty Moore and Ricky Matsui honestly don't actually have that bad of backstories. They're kind of comedy relief, especially Ricky Matsui. But like I said, I want to talk about all those dark moments to kind of paint the picture that this is a much darker and deeper campaign, but that does not necessarily take away from the fact that there are moments of levity and fun in this that kind of bring your spirits back up despite that. A few of the bits that pop into my mind is the dancing baby of Cugrash when he is in like public places, even though he's a rat. People that can't see magic just see a very hairy baby. So him and Sofia Bicicleta go around one night and do like a weird dancing baby routine to get free food at diners.
I try to start dancing like as a rat, like I'm a trick rat.
There's one scene with pigeons where everybody's trying to get dates to a pigeon wedding, and they're all trying to hit on pigeons, and there's thousands of pigeons in Kingston's house.
With Jessica Pigeon, and that was sort of weird for a while.
What was up with Jessica Pigeon?
Oh, you know, it's one of those things where they met in college and they sort of fell into a pattern, and then they got off and sort of changed as people, but it was kind of like good money after that.
Okay.
They had already sunk so much time into the relationship that as they became more and more incompatible, it just didn't seem to make sense anymore.
Yeah.
And all of our friends, you know, nobody wants to be that first person across the river to sort of mention like, hey, you guys fight more than you get along, so maybe you should guys think about packing it in. You're still in your early 20s, you know, you could actually, you know, find another partner, go out and date around, but it just seems to be that kind of thing where, you know, routine and habit, is every day it gets harder against the weight of all the previous experiences to break out of a bad pattern. It's weird, you're codependent.
I stuff a Xanax in his mouth as I pass by.
There's an entire scene where Zach Oyama's character swims all the way to Staten Island to put out a fire. And I love everything with Zach Oyama's character. He's really fun. Like, this just good-natured, wholehearted, but kind of dim-witted, buff, sexy guy is always really fun. And on the topic of Staten Island, the ongoing joke that Staten Island fucking sucks and anybody would rather sleep on the street than in a 3-bedroom house in Staten Island is hilarious. It reminds me a lot of the forever ongoing joke of Zach Oyama's character asking everybody if he's their dad in Fantasy High.
Inside check as well.
Yeah, go for it.
That one.
That one? This guy, it's weird because you are a half-orc. This guy could be your dad.
But despite those moments of levity, every single one of them is bookended by this darkness that kind of takes over this campaign. And I'm gonna be honest, I honestly didn't really like this campaign as much as I liked Fantasy High. I'm not saying I didn't like it. I did. I enjoyed myself. I got through all of it, and it's like 34 hours of content. I never would have gotten through all that in a month if I didn't enjoy it. But it was almost too dark at times. And it was a little bit hard to follow the story, and maybe that's my own fault, but in the middle chunk there of all these episodes, it just kind of slowed down a lot, and it just felt like one pointless encounter and then role-playing and then another pointless encounter until we got to the end of the campaign where we were back to the actual story that we cared about with Robert Moses and the American Dream and Nod and the Populi and Phantasma and so on and so forth. But the middle just kind of felt like it drug out a little bit longer than it should have. And while we're on the subject of funness, I did talk about how I like the modern setting. It's very original, it's very cool, but I don't think that it can support a campaign of this length because although it's really interesting to see New York City in a modern setting like this, as opposed to something like Fantasy High or A Crown of Candy, these wild things, it does kind of take away the fun aspect of it and the visual stimulus that you get from something like A Crown of Candy where it's so colorful. All that being said though, I did still have a blast 80% of the time while watching this, and it didn't deter me from watching anything else. I'm already on to A Crown of Candy, it's amazing, and I'm gonna check out the Unsleeping City Season 2, but in podcast form, the same way I did Fantasy High, because they did that one remotely. Crown of Candy is set in the world of Calorum. Basically, like I said, Game of Thrones, but food. Every single kingdom is a different food group. You have meats, candies, vegetables, fruits, breads, dairies. And we are following the Rox family, which rule over Candia, the obvious candy realm of Calorum. And this is set 20 years after the war known as the Great Ravening. And following the Rox family, they have to go down to the capital of Calorum to find out who the new emperor of Calorum is now that the old emperor is on his deathbed. And it is widely assumed that King Amethar of Candia will take over the helm as the new emperor. But obviously it doesn't go that way, and from this point forward, I'm going to be giving lots and lots of spoilers. I don't often give spoiler warnings, especially for these campaigns, but this is the first one that I feel like a spoiler warning is 100% necessary, because there's certain story elements of this that will ruin the entire campaign for you if you haven't seen it yet. So if that is enough for you to go watch the campaign, please go invest 34 hours of your time and then come back and push play on this video again. So it's very obvious that this campaign is heavily not only inspired by, but based on Game of Thrones. And it's so obvious from the very beginning when you get the opening title sequence and the font of this and the map layout. But more than that, story elements of Game of Thrones are straight up just lifted straight out and put into the world of Calorum. Like when the Rox family is in the capital and they're finding out who the new emperor is, the Rox family is betrayed, and much like Ned Stark, King Amethar is taken off of his throne of Candia, and the whole of the country is set into a rebellion against the rest of the realm. This happens by a betrayal from somebody that he thought was close to him and loyal to his house.
Your Holiness, my father, the Emperor Gustavo Ivano, named Senator Chibata of Silesia as concordant emperor.
Liar!
Gasps, 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 gasps.
As for the characters, Liam is a ward of the Rox family from his rebel father, Duke Jawbreaker from the mountains of Candia, and he is a direct link to Theon from Game of Thrones. You have the twin sisters being direct carryovers of Arya, who have no desire for the throne or the royal life in any kind of way and rebel against it in any way they possibly can.
Little lady shouldn't play with swords.
I wasn't playing. And I don't want to be a lady.
King Amethar, funnily enough, is both like Jon Stark and Ned.
I'm not a Stark.
In the fact that he is this warrior that has no desire for this throne, but he is also like Jon in different ways that I will get to later on in this. King Amethar and Queen Caramelinda have a political marriage, much like Ned and his wife, Catelyn Stark, but also incredibly similar to them, King Amethar was not originally meant to be the husband of Caramelinda, just like Catelyn wasn't. Caramelinda was meant to be the wife of his older sister, but after all of his older sisters got wiped out and he became the king of Candia, to maintain a political alliance, they had the marriage, which is so incredibly directly from them that it cannot be looked past. Queen Saccharina is such a direct translation over from Queen Daenerys, right down to her having a dragon being the actual heir to the throne, until, and this is where it comes back to Amethar being also like Jon, it is discovered that Amethar is actually the real heir to the throne that he already had. Those are just the big things. There are so many small lifts straight from Game of Thrones. Like, can you remember that episode of Game of Thrones where Arya was looking on and seeing them do like a play of her family and the fall of her family? Yeah, and there's like a puppet history thing of the same exact thing.
Welcome one and all to Puppet History! Today we'll be taking a deep diving, ever-winding look into yet another chapter in the heavy book we call history.
I don't mind it. I think it's really cool. I actually had a lot of fun looking out for all of these pulls from Game of Thrones. I just wanted to talk about just how much of this is directly inspired from it. You know? Moving on to the characters, and honestly, I think these are the best characters that I've gotten so far. Granted, I'm only like 3 seasons into Dimension 20. It might get better. I'm assuming that this is top of the line so far of what I've watched because these people are just getting more comfortable. The stories are making more sense. They're getting better at role playing. Not to say they haven't already. They were phenomenal. But this one is the first where I feel like it's truly cohesive and all these characters are fully realized in ways that some of the other ones weren't, in my opinion. We have King Amethar, played by Lou Wilson, Princess Jet Rocks, played by Emily Axford, but also Queen Saccharina, played by Emily Axford. We have Chancellor Lepan Cadbury, played by Zach Oyama, but also Cumulus, played by Zach Oyama, Liam Wilhelmina, played by Ali Beardsley, Princess Ruby Rocks, played by Siobhan Thompson, and Sir Theobald Gumbar, played by Brian Murphy. And this is the very first campaign where backup characters were made from the very beginning. Every single one of these people had a backup character made from the very start of this because it was just kind of assumed that plenty of people were going to die. Ali Beardsley had Sir Amanda Mallard. Siobhan Thompson had Bitternight Darknibs. Brian Murphy had the Bubblegum Monster. Zach Oyama obviously had Cumulus Rocks, who he actually got to play. Lou Wilson had Murdo Brer. And Emily Axford had Queen Saccharina of the House Frostwhip, who she also got to play. But every single one of those characters were made from the very beginning, which was not something I actually knew until I started doing prep for this video. I just assumed that when they died, they kind of had to rush to figure out how to put somebody in the story. But almost every single one of those characters that I just listed was at least named in passing in the very first episode, which is a really cool way for them to have worked these characters in from the beginning so that it seemed natural when they eventually came into this story. And like I said, some of these characters were my all-time favorite characters. I think my favorite character of this entire campaign and any of these campaigns was Ali Beardsley's character, Liam Wilhelmina. I think I'm saying that wrong. I'm bad at pronouncing that last name. I'm gonna be honest. Wilhelmina. Liam. But Liam has this amazing character arc, being this ward of the Rocks family from his rebel father that lives in the mountains, and he doesn't really feel like he belongs to anywhere. He doesn't really feel like he's welcome at this place, being basically just a fancy captive. He loves nature, he loves seeds, he loves his pet little pig. He's just this really sweet guy, but as it goes on, he gets in all these combat situations. He goes on murdering sprees, having to stay alive and keep these people alive that have started to welcome him. After his pig Preston dies, he full on declares, hey, I'm a war guy now, and just becomes this phenomenal assassin. And Ali, like, they play this so incredibly well. Ali constantly rolls these just clutch nat 20s for story-wise, but also for amazing assassinations where they just get to go in and like disguise themselves as these villains of the story and take them out in the most cinematic possible ways.
You see, Cruller immediately looks over and says, hello, friend. Who's the hollow-eyed companion?
Who's the hottie?
Liam has changed.
And that's another thing I want to talk about. The reason Crown of Candy is so much more brutal and dangerous for these played characters is because this is the first time that Brennan is so extremely by the book. He's constantly measuring things, constantly looking up rules. Everything has to be done by the book. He doesn't pull any punches. If a character is going to die, unlike in the first episode of Fantasy High, the first combat episode at least, where two characters die and he comes up with some crazy reason and reinvents the whole entire story to make these two characters alive again.
Life for life. Hey, Mr. Gibbons? You see Mr. Gibbons looks up and says, I'm sorry, what? And you see that Principal Eggfort takes out a gun and shoots Mr. Gibbons in the head. And then takes the gun and says, the price must be paid. Bam! And shoots himself in the head. Gorgog and Kristen, you come back to life.
What the fuck?
And this one, when people die, they're just fucking dead. So there's very real danger in the combat in this that you've never really felt in any of the other campaigns. I was never worried about any of these people dying in other campaigns. In Unsleeping City, Cugrash died at the end, but it was very much done as a story element. In this, it just happens. But that also makes it be an extremely dark campaign. Like when the first character dies, Lepan, who is a secret necromancer pretending to be a servant of the bulb for the church, this evil religious group that throughout the entire campaign they're trying to take down because they're snuffing out the magic in the world that is very prominent in Candia. And when he dies, yes, it's sad and everybody grieves from it, especially Liam because he lost his pig at the same time. That sent him on the entire arc of being a war guy fucking cool. But later on, a couple episodes down the line, when Jet Rocks, one of the twin sisters, one of the princesses of Candia, gets murdered in cold blood in what is essentially a red wedding scenario where every single person in the campaign gets an assassination attempt on them. When she dies and her sister and Liam have to abandon her right before she dies and Jet tells them to run, it sends this campaign down a very dark path because there's no way story-wise to have something like that occur and have a funeral sequence and have a grieving sequence and have the twins still be alive. Heavy Fred and George energy there. George is never okay again, and either is Ruby Rocks.
Jet, the last thing you feel is a bright, warm glow on your locket of the sweetest heart. Ruby racing up the street as fast as you can. You hold fast to the locket. You sprint over the bridge, and just as you pass over the bridge, the light in the locket goes out.
Before that, this was such a fun and silly, lighthearted campaign about food. But after that, I understand why the setting of candy and food and the silliness and these avocado people and the bread and the donuts and, you know, a milk bottle and all these bits had to be in place in this ridiculous fun setting, because without that setting, you don't have any way to get pulled out of the dreariness of the elements of this, of the brutalness of this campaign and the relentlessness that this family is going through to achieve their goals. And sometimes when I talk like this, I forget that I'm talking about 7 people sitting around a table playing Dungeons and Dragons, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. But I was more moved by those moments than I am in most TV shows. But because I forget that I'm watching Dimension 20, that I'm watching Dungeons and Dragons, that's where the silly campaign comes in. There's specific moments where they're having a funeral sequence, and Brennan, who I don't say often enough is the best dungeon master ever. Just phenomenal. He's amazing. Brennan Lee Mulligan, fucking awesome.
I've been mortified since I've been here. Everyone keeps talking about getting slammed down big style.
Yeah, it's a lot. And it's for those people, you know? It's that's what they want to do. It's just not me. It's absolutely
My head is a milk bottle, and if I were to be slammed down in any sort of meaningful way, I could die.
But anyway, there's moments where Brennan notices that everybody needs a pick-me-up, so he mentions the fact that they're in a food territory again, because nobody's picturing that in their head during the funeral. So he's like, and then the custard-filled donut comes up and lays her sword in your lap, the giant gummy bear. And there's moments like that that kind of bring the levity back to the situation that is very bleak. I do wish this was a lot longer. Like, when I said Unsleeping City, I felt could have probably been a few episodes shorter, maybe even been a side quest setting. I think this one really lends itself to being longer. 17 episodes does not feel like enough. I feel like this world, although very fleshed out, and although all of these characters are really well fleshed out, and it has some of the best villains I've ever seen, especially with Sir Carradine Deeproot and Calroy Cruller, I don't feel like this setting is explored enough. When I look at the map of Calorum, yeah, we saw a little bit of the Dairy Islands. We saw plenty of Candia. We saw a little bit of the capital. I wanted to see the meat lands. I wanted to see the wheat lands. I wanted to see the fruit territory. I wanted to see that little like jungle they had down at the bottom. I wanted to see so much more of this explored, because it was clear to me that they had preparations for all this being explored. Brennan, like I said, is a great dungeon master. He obviously probably had people and settings planned out for all of these territory, and when they're in the different territories, the lighting changes behind them in the dome. And I don't feel like 17 episodes was enough to fully flesh out Calorum. Maybe one day if they have the season 2, we'd be able to, but I don't have my hopes up. That's probably my only gripe about this, though. The ending was really well done. I was on the edge of my seat in the final episode, where you had this really cool combat where it was more like a war scenario rather than individual minis fighting bad guys. And there was this constant fear in the back of your head of, ooh, Queen Saccharina and King Amethar both have rights to the throne. They both want the throne. How's this going to end up? We know that they're betraying each other and that they're lying to each other. Are we going to get the first ever playable character, unplayable character encounter? That'd be dope as shit. But they found a good way to wrap it up in the end with Amethar being the emperor and Saccharina being the queen of Candia. I kind of would have liked the combat, but all things considered, I like the happy ending. We needed a happy ending after the dreariness that we had in this campaign. Now, Misfits and Magic is basically what everybody's fan fiction for Harry Potter is that read the books and watched the movies growing up. It follows 4 Americans that range between 16 and 17 years old, spread all over the country with different backgrounds and personalities that get accepted into what is basically Hogwarts, obviously, but they don't use the name Hogwarts or any of the house names or the sport name. But these 4 teenagers get accepted into this school as a pilot program of magical people to try and, bring in people of different cultures and of an older age and to test out Americans being at this school and how it would go. So the 4 of them get teleported to what is basically Hogsmeade to meet their head mistress and go about their new lives as wizards and witches in not Hogwarts. Now, Misfits and Magic does not play in Dungeons and Dragons. Misfits and Magic plays in Kids on Brooms, which is an offshoot of Kids on Bikes, which Kids on Bikes you can imagine is a lot like a Stranger Things setting of a modern world, and Kids on Brooms is an offshoot of that, of kids in a magical world. And there are some aspects of it that I like more and some aspects of it that I like a lot less than D&D. Now, for one, there is no actual combat or turn-based combat really within Kids on Brooms, and there's also no health, so nobody is really at danger of dying. You don't get the normal modifiers that you normally would in D&D. Instead, you get what is called grit, charm, fight, flight, brains, and brawn. And within those, you get to assign a certain polyhedral die to which one you are better at to worst at. And the DM sets the difficulty for that roll, so if you have to roll brawn and you have to roll a d4, you're not going to do great. But if you have a d20, you might do awesome. But there is always the chance of you doing better than what you think you will, because when you roll a nat of the top on that die, whether on the d4 it's a 4 or d20 is a 20, it's called a lucky break and it explodes and you get to roll it again and you get to keep doing that until it stops exploding, and that is your number that you combine all of them to.
8 explodes.
And that's 3 from over here.
8 explodes again.
Whoa.
Yo, the dice are done. That's currently
16.
16 plus 3 is 19. Call that a 20.
Yes.
Now, I think that is a very, very cool system, but for being only a few episodes long, I didn't really grasp it fully until almost the very end of the campaign itself. So I was a bit confused, but it does allow for a lot more role play within the world. There is really no combat episodes. It's not like in the main campaigns where you have one RP episode and then one combat episode and RP and combat and so on and so forth. It's just all role play, and I kind of like the role play the most, so I enjoyed it. Like I said, this takes place in what is not Harry Potter and not Hogwarts, and I don't remember the names of them, so I'm just going to refer to them as Hogwarts and Hogsmeade and the Hogwarts houses and whatnot. The main plot of this and the main setting is that Evan Kelp, who is Brennan Lee Mulligan's character, which, by the way, the characters are Danielle Radford as Sam Black, Erika Ishii as Dream, Lou Wilson as Whitney Jammer, and Brennan Mulligan as Evan Kelp. Evan Kelp has what they call his shadow, kind of a dark entity within him that is encouraging him to turn to the dark side and become evil, much like like a Voldemort character within this. And the main kind of plot and antagonist of this side quest is that dark presence within Evan Kelp and everybody trying to overcome it while also changing the way that things are done in this backwards ass school. And that's one of my favorite aspects of this is I love Harry Potter. I do. I have a Harry Potter tattoo. I have a lot of Harry Potter stuff back there. This poster is from Harry Potter. I don't hide the fact that I'm a huge fan of it. And neither do these people. They talk about the problematic history of Harry Potter and especially the problematic history of J.K. Rowling.
Fuck turfs. Can I say those fuck turfs? Fuck turfs.
But they also say that they love Harry Potter, but that doesn't stop them from dunking on Harry Potter like every 5 minutes, from how weird and stupid their sport is to the fact that J.K. Rowling made it canon that they would just poop in their pants or in hallways and then vanish it, to the fact that it is unhealthy and problematic for them to separate out these kids into these 4 distinct groups, one of the group basically being just evil, which, by the way, I recognize the irony of me having a Slytherin tattoo, but Slytherin is about ambition and cunningness. That's what it is.
Yeah, isn't cunning just bad smart?
Yeah.
Cunning is just a word for if you're smart and bad.
And now the elephant in the room. Brennan is not the DM. This is not only the first campaign that Brennan doesn't DM, but it's also the first campaign after COVID. And it is the first one in person that they had in years. And seeing Brennan be a PC is really, really cool after watching hundreds of hours of him being a DM, because he is a phenomenal PC, and more than that, it's fun to watch him having a blast and enjoying being a PC. The whole plot kind of revolves around his character. He has some of the best dialogue and best monologues within this. He basically plays this like extremely powerful dark wizard that does not want to be a powerful dark wizard and is doing everything he can to just be a nice, normal, calm, relaxed dude and enjoy his friend group. But let's talk about the other characters for a second. I want to start with Erika Ishii. I've already talked about Brennan, so let's talk about the other ones. Erika Ishii playing Dream is one of my favorite characters within this. She has this really phenomenal arc of being this, dark, brooding character that wants nothing more than to have this like dark chaos magic and to be evil, to have like a snake familiar and like a twisted bone wand, much like Evan Kelp gets. But when she gets there, her magic is princess magic. She has this like pink glittery poofy wand. All of her magic is laced with pink glitter and like rainbows and stardust. And we learn that in her past, she was much more like that. But then, she had her goth emo phase that she is currently in. And she learns over time throughout this to accept that she can be both. She can be both this, pink princess glittery chaos magic, but also this dark brooding chaos magic, and sort of combine the two into this true personality of herself. And she has a wonderful moment where she teaches Evan Kelp that if she can accept that about herself, he can accept that there is a part of him that is dark and use it in his favor for good things. Danielle Radford plays like this influencer that goes to this school that is pretty clueless and not the smartest, but just a very nice all-around person that everybody flocks to because she's so charming and she helps everybody realize their best self. Lou Wilson plays Whitney Jammer, and Lou continues to always be one of the best role players in all of Dungeons & Dragons, playing this jock that goes there, takes the worst house, Chimeron, Goat House.
That's with the goat. Get the horns!
And which is basically Hufflepuff, and says that like 80% of all the students or 60% of all the students or something like that are in this one house because they're just the miscellaneous throwaways. And it's like, nah man, we're the best, we're the coolest, fuck everybody else. And just goes on to basically be a badass. And Lou Wilson, like I said, one of the best role players and best D&D players I've ever seen, and he continues to be so in Misfits and Magic. Really the only fault of this is that it is nowhere near long enough. The whole campaign, not including the Christmas special or the live special, is less than 10 hours long. There's not enough time, in my opinion, to establish these characters, establish the setting, establish the antagonists, and overcome these obstacles while having it be believable and fleshed out enough, especially in a fantasy world that is this in-depth with this many new things to learn, and especially when you have player characters like this that are so good at roleplay, so oftentimes they get stuck in a roleplay conversation that is too interesting to stop for 30 to 40 minutes straight. Abria is a good DM, and she tried to make up for this by doing multiple time skips and because the first 2 episodes basically took place in like the first 2 days, and they need like an entire goddamn school year, and they only had a couple episodes left. But in the end, it just felt rushed. I'm not saying I didn't enjoy myself. I just really, even if it was just like 2 episodes longer, which is generally what side quests are, I don't know why this one was much shorter, I think it would have benefited a lot from that. But that's really the only negative aspect. So Escape from the Bloodkeep is the first side quest by Dimension 20, and it follows a fictionalized version of the end of Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. Very, very obviously. Because within the very first 2 episodes, you have the exact plot of Return of the King, with all of the characters from that either just playing exaggerated versions of themselves or gender-bent versions of themselves. But instead of following the good guys, we are following the villains. And I don't want to say bad guys, because these are some really good guys in here.
Thank you. I've been trying to cross-hatch recently, and
It's
I think
incredible.
it brings depth to a 2-dimensional piece I had never accepted before.
And that is a surprising feature of this that we're going to explore more in this video. But the basic synopsis of Escape from the Bloodkeep is that the big bad guy, not Sauron, but you know, basically Sauron, he gets destroyed when the ring, but not the ring, the crown gets thrown into not Mount Doom, but the scary mountain.
When my crown is returned, all the peoples of Elna will turn to me and say, fuck, 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 fuck. No, 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 no.
And when he gets destroyed, all of the bad guys in the evil realm within this world just plunges into chaos and starts to crumble around them because evil has been ridden from the world. And it is up to our 6 main characters, the closest lieutenants to the big bad guy, not Sauron. I cannot remember the names, otherwise I would use the names. My apologies. They are on a quest to get evil back into the world and to take over the realms of men, elves, and dwarves. And because this is the very first side quest, every single person that plays in this, every single player, is different from the intrepid heroes. And we have an absolutely stellar cast that I was so excited about. We have Amy Vorpahl playing Ethnic Murder Death, Mike Trapp playing Sokbar, Matt Mercer playing Krazthun or Leland, Erika Ishii playing Lilith, Rekha Shankar as Maggie, and Ifian Wadwe as Marcus St. Vincent. And these are some of the most fun characters I've ever seen in Dungeons & Dragons, and I might even go so far as to say the most fun characters that I've seen so far in all of Dimension 20. There are some absolute standouts in this. Every single one of them is amazing, but Matt Mercer obviously stands out very heavily. Probably best known for being the DM for years on end for Critical Role. A very similar live style, like sister of Dimension 20. I've never been a big fan of Critical Role personally. I don't like the live setting. I'm more of a Dimension 20 person. I've tried to get into it, but I think at this point it's more just being overwhelmed by the amount of content I'd have to catch up on.
I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it.
Either way, I still love Matt Mercer, and he's fantastic in this, seeing him have an absolute blast being a PC for once, just like it's a blast seeing Brennan Lee Mulligan be a PC for once because he's a lifer DM. But probably my favorite character in this is Mike Trapp. Mike Trapp, who, if you're a fan of Dropout, you know best from Actually as the host, is so great as Sokbar. There is not a single moment that I'm not laughing my ass off when he's on screen, and his relationship with Jeremy, his Scream Beast familiar, is hilarious.
Hey, buddy, go on. Sometime, someone is going to have a nightmare about a Scream Beast, and there'll be another Scream Beast in this world, all right?
Erika, who I'm familiar with from watching Misfits and Magic, plays an entirely different character in this, really showing her range of acting ability. Playing the Spider Woman that has thousands of children and spreads evil throughout the land with her spiders and underground, but also just being this extremely caring mother.
Mom, look, it's my first paycheck.
Your mommy's special little girl. I love it. Just like bursts into tears.
Just in the same way that Silkbar, Mike Trapp's character, is this extremely caring, like, owner or familiar himself to Jeremy and cares all about these creatures of this world. And that's kind of that's a through line throughout this entire season that makes it incredibly fun and kind of diverts your expectations of these evil characters and what you assumed was going to be this evil campaign. They are playing the technical bad guys in Lord of the Rings, but all of them are much better than the good guys. Every time a good guy comes on screen, you're just like, oh, this fucking guy.
Oh, sweetheart, they made me king. I'm the king of Tyrius.
And then you have Silkbar, who loves animals and creatures and just wants them to thrive and to take care of them. You have Lilith, who just wants to be a good mother and for her thousands of children to have great lives and careers ahead of them. You have Maggie, played by Reika, who is the girlfriend and also baby mama. Weirdly enough, that got thrown in randomly in the middle of the season and was a hilarious through line as well throughout the rest of it. The girlfriend of not Sauron, and also the daughter of the true evil of the land.
Show me your hands.
No.
Show me your hands.
No.
Show me your hands.
Fine, Dad, there's no ring.
You motherfucker!
And you see he takes a huge hook and kicks Zawulnaj in the chest, and you see he goes,
Draw my dog! You dumbass piece of shit, you motherfucker, bro! Fuck you, bro!
You stupid asshole! Boom, the flame disappears.
But just wants to be seen as her own person and powerful in her own right. Ethnic murder death, which is just knife backwards, so very cool. This elven woman that left the good side to come to the bad side because she was just being recognized again as a wife to the true king and daughter of one of the leader elves.
I am filled with nothing more than a calm, ever-flowing feeling of doing what I must.
How is this the good guy?
Razthun, or Leland, being the right-hand man to not Sauron, but also just being known as Leland, this very sensitive guy that just cares about his friends deeply, but also wants to rise through the ranks and just be a loyal servant, and is honestly not amazing at his job. While everybody else is being a complete badass throughout this entire series, Leland struggles to take down the gender-bent Samwise Gamgee, which is one of the most hilarious things, seeing him being just useless, just fucking useless, but lovable to the end, and everybody wants to support him. And then Iffy's character, Marcus St. Vincent, the abandoned pirate that is second heir to like a pirate society, and also the only one that is just a guy, and he learns to value all these people and makes a companion with John Feathers, this eagle that he convinces is actually being held down by the constraints of the good side. And putting all these people together, it makes a campaign that is unlike what you expected. Like I said, this is supposed to be the evil and bad campaign. In fact, Brennan stated that the last encounter was supposed to be PvP with one lone character standing, one last PC standing, but he had to change it at the last minute to be something different.
Towards the end of episode 5, I started to realize that my original plans for the final battle just straight up were not going to happen. I had imagined that 6 evil PCs might be led into a PvP final battle where they were all trying to kill each other. The second to last episode was full of, I would say largely unprompted by me, these confessions of love and devotion.
This became one of the most heartfelt and loving and kind of hallmark campaigns out there for Dimension 20, with all of these bad guys learning to value their friendships and love and companionship and wanting to boost each other up in society, but also psychologically because they're all damaged in their own way. And he knew that none of them would fight each other because going into the final encounter, they literally had a group hug in character.
Guys, why don't we all just get one big hug around the fountain?
This was supposed to be the evil game. This was the evil one.
So while you have this campaign that also has some of the most beautiful and dark atmospheric sets and miniatures out there, just seriously absolutely gorgeous, you also just have this heartwarming and lighthearted campaign with these characters that just make you happy, but also because of their constant goofing around and being silly, it is amped up by these evil things that you're picturing around them, and I just laugh nonstop. This honestly might be the very first campaign that I've seen that I would describe as perfect in every single way in execution and acting and characters and yada yada yada, just every single way. Misfits and Magic I love, but I felt like it was too short and I kind of missed the combat. Fantasy High, for being the very first one, was absolutely phenomenal. But when it came to season 2, I was kind of let down by the fact that it was, live streamed and it didn't have the same watchability to me. I still enjoyed it. I listened to it in podcast form, but I was disappointed because I loved that campaign so much, being the first one. And when I immediately went to go watch season 2, I was kind of disappointed that the production value is a little lower because it was live. But maybe they realized that too because they never did it again. Who knows? The Unsleeping City I felt was a little bit long, and in contrast to Crown of Candy, I felt wasn't long enough. But we are getting remedied with that because we're getting the Ravening War, which I'm currently watching, and it's amazing. But this one, I feel like the length was perfect. I felt like all of the characters were perfect. The fact that they had miniatures in combat was amazing. It was some of the most beautiful miniatures in combat I've ever seen. And it wasn't too long, and it had an entire story encapsulated in this of a beloved narrative that we already know, but flipped on its head to where we're rooting for the bad guys. All in all, it was the perfect side quest. And the fact that it was the very first side quest is insane. Just insane. Now, the Ravening War is set years before the events of Crown of Candy and explores the events of, you guessed it, the Ravening War. The war we heard so much about throughout A Crown of Candy that caused the world to be the way it is, with the Emperor and the Concord and everybody falling in line behind him, but also the Bulbian Church being such a big presence in Calorum itself. We meet our 5 heroes, some from the poorer reaches of this land, others borderline royalty, some warriors, some outcasts, but each one of them has a secret that they do not want to get out.
If we're all admitting secrets, I wasn't always a firefighter.
And a secret order from the Bulbian Church holds that against them to do their bidding to get this war underway so that the Bulbian Church can rise and be the highest power in the land. Now, while A Crown of Candy was a very direct, nearly one-to-one Game of Thrones ripoff, like literally I talked for about 3 minutes in my last video, so I'm not going to go into it so much. When the Rox family is in the capital and they're finding out who the new emperor is, the Rox family is betrayed, and much like Ned Stark, King Amethar is taken off of his throne of Candia. This happens by betrayal from somebody that he thought was close to him. Liam is a ward of the Rox family, and he is a direct link to Theon. The twin sisters being direct carryovers of Arya, who have no desire for the throne or the royal life in any kind of way. King Amethar, funnily enough, is both like Jon Stark and Ned.
I'm not a Stark.
And the fact that he is this warrior that has no desire for this throne. King Amethar and Queen Caramelinda have a political marriage, much like Ned and his wife, Catelyn Stark. But also incredibly similar to them, King Amethar was not originally meant to be the husband of Caramelinda, just like Catelyn wasn't. Caramelinda was meant to be the wife of his older sister. Queen Saccharina is such a direct translation over from Queen Daenerys, straight down to her having a dragon being the actual heir to the throne. But every single aspect of A Crown of Candy was a direct link to Game of Thrones, right down to battle sequences that happening, to characters within that, to the point that I could actually predict the end. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. A Crown of Candy, like I said, is my all-time favorite Dimension 20 season. But this season, which I expected because of House of the Dragon being out, to be a 1-to-1 rip of House of the Dragon, is nothing like that. As far as I can tell, there's absolutely nothing taken from that. There are no uncles fucking nieces.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
And as far as I can tell with my keen eye, there are no bastards that are being told to be the true kings of the land. But, you know, maybe I just didn't watch close enough. This is an original Matt Mercer storyline, to the point that there are actually some moments in this that Brennan himself is surprised with things that Matt came up with for this world. When you think about it, not only is that impressive for Matt to unearth things in this that are going to surprise Brennan in the very own world that he created, but it is also rather, I don't know, kind of Brennan to give this world over to Matt for a season and to let him make changes and developments in this canon that he does not have a part in saying yes or no to. Like, the amount of trust that that has. Like, imagine giving somebody that level of control over like, your baby, something that you poured so much of yourself into, which you realize with this world, Brennan poured so much of himself into, and so much time and thought and effort. Now, for those of you that don't know what the setting of Calorum is, I will give it very briefly. Calorum is a food nation. It is split into the meat kingdom, the dairy kingdom, candy, bread, vegetable, and fruit. Everything in this world is food and edible, and all the people in this world are the foods of the kingdom that they hail from.
Lady Amango, she's Jessica Rabbit as a mango.
Parna is like short, small, slight, young chili pepper trying to affect a sense of calm.
Bishop Rathaniel Charlock, a very wise and elderly radish. I have a big old red head.
Delisandro Katzen, a face right on the edge of boyhood before manhood, 19 years old.
Colin Provolone, he's not exactly the first hire someone would make. He's very greasy looking. He probably smells.
And then you have combinations foods, which are my absolute favorite. Like, if you're on the border of the candy nation or the bread nation, maybe you'll be a cake. If you're on the border of the bread, the dairy, the meat, and all like that, maybe you're a pizza, which is very exciting.
Time is money, money is power, power is pizza, pizza is knowledge. Let's go.
But one thing that I felt lacked so much from A Crown of Candy was world exploration. Even though we have this huge, diverse, vast world that is so clearly fleshed out in Brennan's mind, we never got to explore it to the fullest extent that we could. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that that season was shorter because there was problems with the filming stage, and the fact that they got shut down by the fire marshals and had to relocate. So from what I hear in the rumors is that we were supposed to have times in the Meatlands, but we couldn't get there just because they didn't have enough time in the shooting schedule anymore. So with this prequel, not only do we get to explore more of the Dairy Islands, but we also get to go to the Meatlands. We get to go to the Bread Nation. We're all over Vegetania and Fruitatia, and we learn more about how the Bulbian Church came about. We learn more about how the politics are at play here. And honestly, the only place we really don't see is Candia, which is fine because we spent like 9-10 episodes of that in A Crown of Candy. Now, I touched on it very briefly in the beginning, but I want to talk about our characters and our players in this, obviously. I'm a blind boy. We have Abria Iyengar as Karna Solara, Anjali Bihimani as Queen Amango Epish Depish. Woo! Butchered that shit. Oh my god. Brennan Lee Mulligan as Bishop Rathaniel Charlock, Lou Wilson as Thane Delisandro Ketzan, and Zach Oyama as Colin Provolone. The easiest name out of those to say. Now I'm taking my glasses off again so you don't see the reflection, but now I am blind once more. The most surprising thing to me, honestly, is Lou and Zach returning to this. They were not quiet at all about the fact that A Crown of Candy fucked them up. Just like A Crown of Candy fucked anybody up that liked it. Like, I love A Crown of Candy. And I started watching it and I immediately got hooked. It was really phenomenal. And at first I was like, man, this is fun. This is such a creative universe. I picture it in my head. All these people are being silly and having a blast.
I'd be kicked down the stairs.
That's horrible. Who does that to you?
Oh, everyone. Sometimes I get scared they're going to do it, so I do it myself.
That's dark. That's a new level of darkness.
And then it got sad and main character started to die. And then we had an hour-long funeral sequence for a teenager. And I was, beside myself. And I watched this right before bed. And I couldn't imagine what it was like to play in this universe and embody these characters, but here Lou and Zach are again, embodying different characters inside this universe. Lou embodying a character that has to kill the mother of his old character, spoiler alert, but everything I talk about is a spoiler, so don't be surprised. I love seeing Abria come into this as a player. I really like her. I've enjoyed her in almost everything else she's been in. I listen to the podcast that she does, Worlds Beyond Number, and that's really great. And obviously I saw her as a DM in Misfits and Magic, but this is my first time seeing her as a player. And the amount that she embodies this character and does her face makeup, along with Anjali, who plays a mango in this, a mango, very clever name. She basically paints her face orange to match her character, and like it's really great how the lengths that these people go to embody their characters and make it feel real and pull you into the theme of it. And then obviously, I fucking love anytime I get to see Brennan play. So far, the only other time I saw him play was in Misfits and Magic as Evan Kelp, and that was an amazing experience.
About 60 seconds left. Okay. You really should concede. If you're not going to concede, what do you want me to tell your family?
And then in this, he plays Bishop Rathaniel Charlock, a old radish bishop for the Bulbian Church. And he's very silly and he's fun, but he's also deep and dark, and he goes to these places that I don't feel like a lot of other players would be able to go, while also keeping it enjoyable to watch.
You know, it rarely comes up. I am a priest, if you want to talk, or...
You're holding a couple of heads right now.
And is your father's head fully gone?
I think it's pretty submerged.
Pretty submerged,
I don't
deep
know, there's
in
probably
there.
some chunks in
Maybe
there.
I'm just...
Rathaniel.
No, that was just very sad, your daddy. Ooh, I'm just gonna take my crozier and just sort of root around in this.
I guess I do want to kind of talk. If you
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm saying. You know, that's the amazing thing about necromancy is it's not just skeletons and stuff. It's closure.
Now, this is only a side quest. So one of my biggest fears going into this was that, like some of the other side quests, it would feel too short because they're often, 4, 5, 6, 7 episodes long at their very longest. And usually the campaigns are 20 plus episodes long. So we get to explore the worlds with these people in a much bigger way. So the side quests are often a lot more fun and whimsical and less explorative of character, and that's just kind of be expected. And I didn't want that from the Ravening War because it's not what I got and not what I loved about A Crown of Candy. But the use of time skips within this season is so brilliant because we meet the characters when they're very young before the war, and then the very next episode we skip forward in time after they have committed absolute atrocities of war and dealing with the fact that they have killed a well-beloved figure of A Crown of Candy, the mother of Amithar Rocks.
Queen Pamela Rocks, within the carriage, holding onto her crossbow, caught off guard.
Deli knows he's found his target and is going to attack Pamela Rocks twice.
And then the characters have falling outs with each other after they have years of relationships built up, and most of the time you wouldn't get to see characters evolve like this or build relationships like this over a short season of 5 to 6 episodes because it would probably take place over a couple days or a couple weeks at the most. But in this, we get to see people like Deli and Colin Provolone form bonds and relationships through war, but then separate because of differences of how to go about that war.
There can be no holding back, Colin. This is the moment. You heard Rathaniel, you heard the bishop. War is about to come. And the Meadlands will be united. And we will stand, and we will fight, and you will be there with me.
I think Colin's just gonna undo his belt that has his sword and his dagger on it and just drop it on the ground in front of him.
We get to see crushes evolve to wanted relationships between Lou and Abria. We get to see Nathaniel Charlock, played by Brennan, have his fall from grace as he descends into madness within the Bulbian Church. So it takes these 6 episodes and makes it feel like legitimately so much longer. It makes you feel like these relationships are real, that this war is taking years at a time and devastating the people around it. It's truly a brilliant way and very well executed. Like, time skips like these can make a story feel bland and like the characters are just 1 or 2 dimensional because you're not seeing aspects of their life. But Matt, the players themselves, really make it work in the perfect way. Now, speaking of Matt Mercer, I've talked about in the past how I've never been able to get into Critical Role, and a lot of that just has to do with because I'm intimidated by the pure number of episodes and time it would take to get involved. I started Dimension 20 because I wanted to get into some live action D&D, and going into Fantasy High with its like 20 something episodes is much more doable than going into Critical Role with its like 800 fucking something amount of episodes. But Matt Mercer is always talked about as the best DM to ever live and watch, and I'm not going to say Brennan is better or Matt is better because they are different, but holy shit do I get the hype of Matt Mercer now. The understanding that he has of this game, the noises that he can do, the way that he describes environments and people and situations to just pull you into this world, make you visualize it in your head. The way that he understands, like I said, this world that Brennan built and handed over to him for a side quest in a way that makes you think that he is the one that built this world is phenomenal. And seeing all the players light up anytime Matt says his catchphrase, "How do you want to do this?" is so amazing. And now it just makes me want to describe to Matt Mercer how I would do something.
Queen Pamela Rocks succeeds, but does not quite have the hit points. How do you want to do this?
Oh my God!
Now, the ending of this is anything but happy. In fact, 2 of the players, and again, I'm spoiling everything. Why are you here if you haven't seen it? 2 of the players, Abria and Brennan, both die in the end, and not even saving anybody. They just rolled bad and they lost. And that was a pinnacle thing of A Crown of Candy, is that everybody had to make a backup character when they started because Brennan was not pulling any punches. He was trying to kill these people. Oftentimes in combat, in Dimension 20, rules are stretched a little bit when players are about to die because nobody wants their character to die. Nobody wants to watch the character die, but things were by the book in A Crown of Candy, and it is just the same in Ravening War. So when Brennan or Bria die in the end, it's not for the cause of anything. It's just because a war is going on. And then in the end, when evil is vanquished, which, by the way, I love the expansion of lore in this, with the hungry one being people, the great bulb above being the light in the fridge, and it makes you wonder, are humans a thing in this universe? Are they like the big grand evil? Is all of this just taking place inside of a fridge? I don't know. I would love more campaigns in A Crown of Candy. I hope they do a lot more because it's such an amazing, amazing world to explore. But like I said, nobody gets a happy ending. Anjali kind of has the happiest ending, getting to go off and raise her child in peace. Colin Provolone has to travel the world and take out followers of the bulb of the secret organization. And Deli resigns his post as chief in his land and just ventures up north, which actually, now that I think about it, that's a very Jon Snow thing to do. Okay, maybe that was, yeah, no, that's a very Jon Snow thing to do. I found one thing that's Game of Thrones. I got you there. I got you, Matt. I figured you out. My point being, this was amazing. I had a phenomenal time, and I cannot absolutely wait for a new season of A Crown of Candy spin-off somewhere down the line because this world is just so great, and I hope they keep doing it. You have to watch this. Now, Mentopolis is the 19th season of Dimension 20, and it's a side quest, like I said, 6 episodes long, amazing cast of characters, and it is basically noir inside out. In fact, if you go on to the Dimension 20 wiki, it is in the genre of noirified inside out. We follow our 6 main characters as they are inside the brain, an inside out emotion-like scenario where they are controlling the character of Elias Hodge, the big guy as they refer to him, in a day in his life, a particularly bad day in fact. Because in this day of Elias Hodge, not only does he jump out a window to safety after getting his life threatened by his boss, he then gets brainwashed, shits his pants on the road, swings into the same building, crashes through, punches out his boss, and runs to freedom and secures a date.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
But inside the mind of Elias Hodge is a 1900s noir-type flick. Smoke-filled streets and gangsters and speakeasies and coppers. And they all talk like Mike Trapp in this next clip, and I'm not going to attempt it because I won't nail it.
Stacy fake name, huh? You know, is that at all related to Joanna fake name?
So what if it is?
Well, I'll tell you so what if it is. There ain't no one named Joanna fake name.
You got me.
Case closed.
But beyond this being a very cool noir style setting, everything, of course, because it's Brennan, and we've seen him make puns on food and meat and candy and what have you in A Crown of Candy, everything in here, down to people's names and locations, are puns. Like the diner they go to is Nostalgia's, and you don't order food, you order a feeling that brings you back to a certain time.
Yeah, can I get the experience of tasting a root beer float for the first time?
Points up at that exact thing written big on the menu. It's like the first thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. That's exactly right.
Don't you have anything new?
Look, Ms. Pulse, you come to Nostalgia's all the time. We only serve things we already like.
But if you look at the map of Mentopolis, you know, the college is Hippocampus. The motor function is called Motor City, much like Detroit. And every single location and every single person we talk to is exactly in this way. But they also represent the pun that he is talking about. Like if we move on to the characters real quick, and I'll go more in depth about the characters and the people, but their names are some of the best parts about this. Gotta get on my glasses because I'm blind. You have Hank Green as the Fix. Now, that is not a pun in and of itself, but one of the best characters. I'm gonna get to him. Siobhan Thompson as Imelda Pulse or Impulse. Freddie Wong as Dan Fucks. Again, not a pun, but it is certainly what he does. Danielle Radford as Anastasia Tension. Mike Trapp is Hunch Curio. You know, he's got a hunch. He's curious. He's an investigator. Alex Song Sha, I apologize if I'm butchering that, as Conrad Shintz or Conscience. But then, you know, you have the minor characters like Leon Logic or Fanny Farnsworth, Max Medulla, Pasha N, Stacy Fake Name. That one doesn't go into it, but Stacy Fake Name, that bit that stretches throughout this entirety of this season, is by far one of my favorite bits. Every single time that somebody gets asked what their name is, they go, Stacy Fake Name.
What's your name? It's nice to meet you.
Well, hello, it's nice to meet you as well. My name is, Stacy. Fake name.
Oh my God, are you related to Joanne?
I am related to Joanne. Fake name.
I love Joanne. She's one of my best friends. Hello and welcome to Sugars.
Hello. The name is Fake Name. Stacy Fake Name. I have a table in the back.
Ah, Miss Fake Name, of course, right this way. And sort of leads you over. Mr. Fox.
Yes, what is it?
Miss Fake Name is at her table.
Oh, which one, Joanna or Stacy?
Joanne said she was never coming back.
I expected not after last time.
Because of that, there's this reputation of a Stacy Fake Name being this like criminal that's going all over the city, doing all of these things. And then we find out that Stacy Fake Name is an actual person and she's an actual criminal. And because all these people in this world of Elias Hodge's brain have names that represent who they are, of course the criminal is named Stacy Fake Name. It's just a hilarious bit. But as far as Dimension 20 goes, this is, and I'm not exaggerating here, I've watched 7 seasons, I know who the cast is in every other season as well, but so far, this is my all-time favorite cast that we have gotten. Barring maybe the Intrepid Heroes, but for people outside of Dimension 20 that are coming in, that aren't normally here, that aren't the recurring cast of the Intrepid Heroes, far and away my favorite cast. So amazing, so incredibly stacked. I mean, the big name pull that we have here, that is, at least for me, that is a huge crossing of life loves, is Hank Green playing the Fix.
I'm the Fix, a manifestation of the system that allows for hyperfixation. Did you know that for every snake on Earth, there is one snake dick? You know, only half of snakes have dicks. And that means that every snake that has a dick has 2 dicks. And that's a true fact about our world.
Now, I have been a nerd fighter since 2008. I have been following the Vlogbrothers for 16 years. Hank Green and John Green have been massive influences on my life. I won't go into it too much. I have a video all about what they have done to affect my life. If you want to watch that, go check it out. That's not what you're here for. But Hank Green playing the Fix is such a role that I never thought I would see him play. You know, he always seems like a spellcaster, like a small, elusive, maybe rogue type. Maybe he plays like a sorcerer. But in this, he just plays this big, burly man. But what really works about the Fix is most of the time he never actually hits anybody. He just intimidates them with facts, because the Fix's job in this world is to stop people from having distractions. So he knows all these tiny little facts that are distractions to Elias Hodge, the big guy, and people are just so intimidated by him and the facts that he spouts at people.
I understand. We all sometimes want to put our finger in the birthday cake. But you're never gonna do that.
That's right. I'm never gonna do that. I'm never gonna do that. And he straight up turns into mist.
But one of my favorite little aspects of that is when the Fix and Pasha N, like a librarian, flirt with each other by sending facts back and forth, and they get all hot and heavy. But it's very obvious, at least to me, that it's just Hank and Brennan finding a way to flirt with each other. Or maybe that's just a ridiculous headcanon of mine, but I don't know.
Did you know that woodpeckers have a tongue bone called a hyoid bone that wraps around their brain because the pounding into the tree can, of course, it needs to protect their brain from the impact of that powerful feeling of smashing into the wood of the tree to, devour their common meal items, which of course are grubs and larval insects.
I didn't know.
Can I do a snoop check to see how horny the Fix is?
Yeah, that's gonna be Snoop 1.
Great.
But then you have Siobhan Thompson in her first ever foray out into a side quest away from the Intrepid Heroes, I'm so excited to see her. She now has been in more. She just did Burrow's End, which, like I said, I am on the last couple episodes of that as well. But just a revelation in this.
My character is an impeccably dressed, mysterious woman. I'm being followed, Mr. Curio. I'm being followed by heaven knows who.
Her portrayal of Imelda Impulse is so fun because she's like a recognizable figure of a well-to-do family, but she's always giving into her impulses and she's twirling guns around and yada yada. It's so good. Then you have Freddie Wong, who has just an internet legend. I have not seen him in forever, but one of my absolute favorites in the past from like video game high school, and whatever that one video is that's popping in my head right now of him just playing the electric guitar and like magic stuff coming out.
It's a lovely guitar you got there. Yeah. Come here, guitar band.
Awesome.
But he's so good in this as Dan Fox.
Dan Fox, the proprietor of the club, the purveyor of all pleasures, earthly and otherwise, spelled however you want.
I think we know how it's spelled.
In this world, Elias Hodge has not been allowed to have any fun. He's just purely been a working stiff trying to move up in his career. So Dan Fox runs a speakeasy that gives out like passion and serotonin and ecstasy, but it's illegal. So he's running like an illegal speakeasy, and these are like the drugs that he's distributing, and so fun. I love what he does with this character, and I like that to the bitter end, although a good guy, he's still looking out for himself all the way to the end. It's great how he keeps to the character in that way.
Fucks, we got self-loathing, barely, somewhere around here probably, trying to take shit over. We got Elias running through the halls where people are trying to kill him, and you're trying to hatch a grand plan where Conrad plays dead so you can get rich.
I don't hate it.
You discern the matter precisely, my friend.
All right, sounds interesting.
We have Danielle Radford.
My character is A Tension, a tough Scrabble reporter, a body.
Who I don't know all too well. I know her from Misfits and Magic, and she was fantastic in that, and she's equally as fantastic in this. Mike Trapp, who I was the most excited, aside from Hank Green, to see in this, because he was my absolute favorite part of Escape from the Bloodkeep, who you probably know if you haven't seen that from Actually on Dropout. But his character of Soak Bar in Escape from the Bloodkeep was a standout factor of that just had me laughing every single time he was on screen. And his character Hunch Curio.
I'm Detective Hunch Curio. If there's one thing I love, it's questions. If there's two things I love, it's money. And if there's three things I love, it's coffee.
A shitty private eye that somehow keeps getting things right is equally, if not more funny than Soak Bar, to the point where every time he's talking to somebody, he's just making their performance better. But even when he's by himself, just bumbling through everything, but somehow succeeding, it's phenomenal. And then another standout that we have from here is Alex Songsha. I have no idea if I'm saying that right. I'm going to call them Alex from now on.
Conrad Schintz, a small boy, kind of too small. Justin, you're my best friend.
Well, you're my best friend too, but we just tend to say it after something real sad.
Alex playing Conrad Schintz, or Conscience, who is a pivotal emotion that has been kept down because the big guy has been moving forward in this questionable career path, making decisions that require him to not have a conscience. So Conrad Schintz has just been laying low with his adorable best friend dog. It just kind of, moving the headlines of papers to the front as just like a minor, like, fuck you to the man. But, Conrad would never say fuck you, so not like that. And the relationship that Conrad and Dan Fucks have is really, really good. The way they play off each other, and how Freddie Wong just fucking hates Alex's character. And then even when they become friendly, he's always insulting Conrad.
Mr. Fox, I don't suppose you've seen a young urchin hanging around here, have you? I saw him.
Oh, who, Conrad, that little shit?
Conrad. Sure, that's probably
My
it.
mortal enemy. Well, how dare you invoke his little shitty name in my club?
Your mortal enemy is a child?
Yes.
Their overarching friendship or hate ship through this is wonderful. Now, this is not based off of normal Dimension 20. This is still obviously tabletop RPG, but this is based on the Kids on Bike system, the same exact system that Misfits and Magic is based off, where they don't have any combat. Everything is based off of different polyhedral dice from D4 all the way up to D20, and you give yourself the larger die based on whatever stats you are best at, and the smaller die based on whatever stats you are worst at. And if you hit the max number on the die, it explodes and you get to roll it again. So sometimes you can have absolutely crazy plays, like has happened in Misfits and Magic and also in this Mentopolis.
Oh, yes, with this D6, let's see how far we get.
No.
Oh, Hank. Worry not.
Yeah, you just have to
I've got
explode
some
twice.
box cars coming. Number 6.
Oh!
Okay, it explodes.
explode.
Gotta get to 14. Gotta get to 14. This feels like craps. Everyone's rooting. Or what? Except I guess in craps, people are rooting for you.
Yeah.
Another 6.
No!
12.
Go, 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 go!
Okay, if you roll a 1, it's all for naught. A 2, this is
No,
box
if
of
he
doom.
rolls a
This is
1,
box
he's
of
gonna-
doom. Give me the box of doom over
Give me
here.
the box.
If you hit a 2, it's all different.
I'm not even. No, check my watch.
Oh.
My heart rate's not even. You're doing.
No problem. 4, baby! Oh my God! All of you in the mist watch a fleet of gangsters shoot Dan Fuck's dick, and bullets ricochet in all directions.
It's so hard.
For role play and for smaller side quests like this, where maybe combat is not the most important aspect, it is a lot of fun. I do think that this would not have worked as well in just a standard Dungeons & Dragons 5e system. I do kind of, over the 12-hour span, miss the combat. But that's not to say that I don't see why Kids on Brooms isn't the better option for something like this. I'm just saying that I miss the combat. I miss the minis I would have loved to see, like the Fix mini compared to the Conrad Shintz mini. I thought that would be fun. But it does help the roleplay aspects of this. And every single one of these people, that is what stand out. The world building is phenomenal by Brennan. Everything has to be done in like a theater of the mind, as is said when talking about things in Dungeons & Dragons that don't have miniatures or maps. Every single moment of this, I can picture it perfectly. When Brennan is describing a testicle man, I'm picturing him in my head as just the most perfect testicle man. Maybe I should cut the part where I said perfect testicle man. We'll see what I decide when this comes out. In Misfits and Magic, which was only a few episodes, I had stated that I really wished it was a lot longer because I felt like there wasn't enough fleshing out. What's interesting about this is it's only 6 episodes, but I feel like maybe it could have been 5. Maybe with the Kids on Bikes playstyle, 5 episodes is kind of the sweet spot because it does get to a point where without the actual combat conflicts, it does start to feel like it all blends together. I'm not saying that it was bad by any means, but there are certainly episodes that I felt were difficult to sit through the entire thing. That being said, the story arc did move at a very brisk pace to where I wouldn't say I was bored at any point, because we were always moving from one cool set piece to the next cool set piece, and we were always meeting more interesting characters and getting, albeit small arcs because it is 6 episodes of our heroes in this. But I do feel like it was maybe just like an episode too long, or maybe you should have had something more climactic in the beginning or towards the end. But that's just me. I still had an amazing time in this. I think this is one of the best side quests with the best lineup of people we've ever had in a side quest. I'd love to see Mike Trappin more. It's amazing that Siobhan is doing other side quests like Burrows, and if Hank Green ever comes back, I would love to see him play in a 5e setting in a longer side quest. That would be so fun. Alex and Freddie Wong, just phenomenal. It's so great to see Freddie again. And I've never heard of Alex before, but they are just really, really great. Today we are covering Burrow's End, the 20th season in Dimension 20. And honestly, to me, the true horror season in Dimension 20. Yeah, we had Never After, which was marketed as the horror season, and it was. It was the Brothers Grimm, and it had scary moments, but a lot of levity behind it. But it never had moments like this one does, where I was truly on the edge of my seat, scared for the characters, not wanting these characters to die. And some of the most gruesome battle settings I've seen in actual play ever. Now, Burrow's End follows a group of stoats that get smoked out of their burrow and have to go on the run through the wilderness to try and find safety. They find safety in a giant abandoned factory that has tens of thousands of stoats in it, more stoats than they have ever seen in their little lives. But inside this factory lies a deep secret that threatens their livelihood and the livelihood of all other stoats. And underneath of this is a deeper mystery of what the blue is. This special thing that gives stoats powers, you know, these Dungeons and Dragons powers, making them have the ability to cast spells and to heal, live longer, be stronger, move faster, and talk in normal language. So they have to fight every step of the way for freedom. Some of them being children, a mother protecting their children, a grandmother trying to protect their entire family, and a couple that is just trying to make their way through life while also leading a cult. Now first, as I usually always do, I want to talk about the characters in this. And one of the things that I noticed is that a lot of the people that we've seen before in Dimension 20, like Brennan, Siobhan, Erica, and Izzy, are all playing characters that are very different from themselves. But even though they're playing characters that are incredibly different from themselves, they're such amazing actors and amazing improvisationalists that when I'm watching this, I just get sucked into it and I see that character. Like Brennan Lee Mulligan is playing what if they weren't Stoats would be like a 30-something-year-old widow mother of 2 absolute wild childs. And he sinks into that role of Tula, a single mom, so incredibly perfectly that I cease to see Brennan Lee Mulligan. I just see Tula, this absolutely exhausted mom.
Walmer is not going to be anybody's dad or husband.
Well, we'll see about that.
No, if Uncle Walmer was going to make it happen, he would have made it happen by now.
Hello, he had a chance with you're not gonna be with my sister, no.
Thank you.
And then Siobhan and Izzy are playing like child. They're Stoats, so they're only like a few months old. But if they were like people, would be like, I don't know, like 13, 14-year-old kids. They're playing these siblings, the children of Tula. And Siobhan herself is playing this kid Jason. She's playing a little boy. Everything about her mannerisms and the way she talks just makes her seem like this wild child little ADHD boy.
Jason, what do you care about?
I mean, I'm pretty hungry.
No.
After all this, you want to eat. So interesting.
Work.
I don't know.
Izzy seems like her smarter sister that is just kind of along for the ride, but trying to keep Jason on the right path. Even tiny little wardrobe choices that Siobhan and Izzy make just sink them into this role of children, especially Siobhan. It is so impressive what she does with the character of Jason to just embody this like little ADHD boy. And then you have Erica, who always kind of plays weird characters. I've never once seen her play a character that was similar to anything else she's ever played, whether it be in Escape from the Bloodkeep or Misfits and Magic or this or the other things that she's been involved with. She's always playing something incredibly original. And in this, she is playing like the grandmother, really old, haggard character, this maternal figure of this entire Burrow, of this little family group. And Erica always gets very sucked into a role. She's almost method in the way that she plays, because even when she's just talking out of character, she's still doing the mannerisms and the voice of whatever character she is doing.
And then I jump up on the lectern and I go, I'm too stubborn to die.
Killed again.
And in rage, I take a swing at this one right here.
And of course, I have to shout out Rashawn Nadine Scott as Viola and Jasper William Cartwright as Thorn Vale. 2 newcomers to the Dome. They're playing a couple. Viola is the sister of Tula of Brennan Lee Mulligan. And like I said, their acting and improvisational skills are incredible in the fact that they can play like sisters so incredibly well. You always feel the familialness in all of these actors. And that's so impressive in like, especially a side quest where they have little time to kind of build up the characters, and especially in a world like this, which is so unique and needs so much fleshing out. Jasper William Cartwright, who plays Thorn Vale, also very, very good. I hope I see more of him in the Dome. I don't know him from anything else, but instantly captivating as kind of this like reluctant cult leader, but also desperately trying to become liked by this family that he's going to be a part of soon.
Yeah, I'll let you lead with Mama. I'm not doing that. I'm definitely...
Oh, she's a teddy bear.
No, she is not. She's a teddy bear with huge claws. Terrifying huge claws. Nothing scares me more than your mother.
And then, of course, you have Abria Iyengar, who at this point has appeared in almost as many seasons as people from the Intrepid Heroes. Like Brian Murphy, Murph has appeared in all 8 of the seasons of the Intrepid Heroes, but nothing else. Abria Iyengar is approaching him having appeared in 6, 3 as a character and 3 as a DM. She's the most common DM besides Brennan, and I absolutely see why. She is always pushing the envelope when it comes to being a DM. Whether it be in Misfits and Magic, where she introduces a lot of props like the wands, whether it be in A Court of Fey and Flowers, where there's so much different set dressing and outfits and makeup that go into it to just bring you into the world. And then in this, where you have so much interactivity in the walls of the dome, but then also that horrifying voice recording that we get later on in this season.
Skywalker, the time is currently 1848, and at approximately 5:17 today, this facility registered a loss of coolant accident in reactor Charlie.
Every single time that Abria features herself as a DM, you just know that something new is going to happen. She even states herself that she's always meeting with the set decorators and the people that are making the miniatures and the battle maps and just being like, what can I do? Like, the bear in this is just horrifying. Like, they have to issue a warning before the episode that bear map is going to be on here, how it opens up and it has like that beating heart that actually moves. Just disgusting, but in the coolest possible way. And it's things like that that make me so excited for when Abria is going to be a guest DM for a season. Now, speaking of the horrifying and the gross, the reason I said in the beginning that this is the true horror season is because I like Never After. I haven't finished it. I've watched a bit. I got sidetracked. I will get to Never After, I promise. But from what I've seen, it's fun and it has like horror elements. Is Brothers Grimm, which is always a great setting when you're going for like anything horror, that like true telling of like child's tales, always amazing. But in this, you have like this close-knit family of stoats, these small fragile creatures that are just constantly in peril. And especially with these children, any single time that they are in danger and you think that they are going to die, I'm just on the edge of my seat because I'm like, no, not Jason, anybody but Jason. From the very beginning, you have them fleeing their home, their original burrow in the forest, because they get smoked out by a forest fire. And so many in their burrow perish, and all of Thornvale's followers in his cult die. And then they're just wandering alone, trying to find a place to call home. And then eventually, when they do find home, a new home, they are sucked into this mystery with radiation and horrible disfigured monsters and ancient stoats. I mean, like ancient, they're like, I think 30 years old, but ancient for a stoat. The entire time, you're just terrified that this family unit is going to get pulled apart in some kind of way. And a couple times it nearly happens. And you're led to believe, oh, they're dead now. But the slow burn of this mystery is another thing that keeps you on the edge of your seat. Yeah, there's horrifying things like the bear and like Meat Wolf. But you're on the edge of your seat because you have the suspense buildup of what this mystery is, and they're constantly referencing the blue, and you don't know until the end, although you deeply suspect it, that it is some kind of radiation that is giving the stoats these abilities. Having said all that, though, and this is really the only true negative I can find, is the slow burn of this can sometimes be a bit too slow, you know? And I'm going to get a little bit in depth here of Dimension 20 in general, because there are certain times where I've said that stories are too long, and there's certain times when I said that stories are too short. This is one that I think honestly could have been about 2 episodes shorter. The beginning was really interesting, really intriguing. The ending was really interesting and really intriguing. The middle of this season drug on a little bit, if I'm honest. There was parts of it in the middle where I had some difficulty keeping my attention on it 100% of the time, and I found myself playing on my phone and then be like, oh, no, can't get distracted, I gotta watch this. And after thinking about it deeply, the reason I kind of came to is I think things like Misfits and Magic and Mentopolis and these like really different settings, these very story-driven narratives that have to be railroaded a bit more by the DM, lend themselves very nicely to different systems. I think this one could have lended itself very nicely to the same thing that those has, which was the Kids on Bike system. Although the combat was a lot of fun, I think maybe Kids on Bikes could have served this one a bit better than normal 5e, or maybe some kind of in-between, something that was much more narrative and role-playing based. Although the combat was fun, it was sparse. I felt like a system like that could have served this maybe a little bit better. And I think worlds like that serve themselves to a shorter, more concise storytelling of like 4 to 6 episodes. I think things like Fantasy High or Crown of Candy that are much more standard fantasy world. Granted, Fantasy High is like Fantasy World meets the 80s, but it operates exactly like fantasy we already understand. Same goes for Crown of Candy. Extremely standard fantasy world, just replace things with food and candy. We don't need any explanation of that world. The characters have much more ability to free roam. Yes, the story has points it has to get to that Brennan railroads them to, but it has a lot more freedom to find its way there naturally, whereas something like this and Mentopolis and Misfits and Magic has to go about it in a much more linear way. And because of that, I feel like that lends itself to shorter seasons. So I think this one could have been much better if it was really only about 2 episodes shorter. But that is really my only gripe with it. Do you agree with that? I've thought a lot about why I think it should be shorter and the why I think some seasons work better short and some work longer. So are you kind of on the same page with me there? I'd love to know. Having said all that, in the end, especially after we meet the human in the second to last episode, it captures my attention so much again.
Hey girl, hey!
We got
to talk to them, don't we?
If that's not advantage.
Oh my God.
And I'm incredibly invested in the ending. And overall, it was a killer ending. I loved the way they did it. Ending these kinds of like really mindfuckery seasons can be kind of difficult to stick the landing. And although I do wish it may have been a little bit darker in the end, I thought it was a little bit too much of like a fairy tale ending. Goes a little bit off the deep end with the whole like Olympics and doctor degrees and whatever. It's fun. It's D&D. It's not realistic. These are talking stoats. But I do feel like there could have been a couple darker elements. Maybe one of them should actually have died in the end. With this whole time of this whole season always being on the edge of your seat for that and it being as terrifying as it was, I felt like one of them should have probably died. Or at least like a fun side character, but not Lucas. Not Lucas. Leave Lucas alone. He's perfect as he is.
We got cubby every morning.
Who says?
My mom.
You do what your mom says?
All the time.
Other than that, I was very pleased with the ending and very pleased with this whole season as a whole.
Here we go.
This season we are in, quite obviously, the junior year of Fantasy High. Fantasy High freshman year was the very first season of Dimension 20, back when it was an actual dome, back when the dome was just blue or red depending on if they were doing a roleplay episode or a combat episode, back when the Intrepid Heroes was first founded, back when Allie didn't even know how to play Dungeons & Dragons. Little known fact, that is why they sit by Murph. We had sophomore year, which I have vocally said is not necessarily my favorite one, but I revisited on a couple road trips and I listened to it as audio. It was really, really good in that sense.
Give me an investigation check.
What would Riz do in this moment? Nat 1. All right.
Also the most chaotic season until junior year. Somehow this one is more chaotic than Starstruck Odyssey and more chaotic than sophomore year, which I never thought would get dethroned. And then after sophomore year, we move on to junior year. This one, probably the most asked for season in years. We revisit the same beloved heroes of Emily Axford as Fig Fayed, Zach Oyama as Gorgug Thistlespring, Siobhan Thompson as Adine Abernat, Lou Wilson as Fabian Seacaster, Allie Beardsley as Kristen Applebee's, and Brian Murphy as Riz Gutgak. And I'll tell you what, guys, I've never been happier to be back in Elmville. So Fantasy High junior year does not pick up right where sophomore year left off. like you might think it does, because sophomore year picks up right where freshman year takes off. Fantasy High junior year does one of my favorite things that I've seen in any Dimension 20 season, which is that it begins at the very end of what would be an entire season quest line. So at the end of sophomore year, they find out about the Night Yorb.
The Night Yorb? What know you of the Night Yorb?
And you have to watch sophomore year to understand just the lunacy behind the Night Yorb being an actual big bad guy for an entire season. So anyway, the very first episode picks up with the end of that entire campaign. They are in the middle of a combat. Everybody has not full health. They don't have all their spell slots and everything. And they're about to take down the big bad Night Yorb. And after they take down the Night Yorb, they just return to school and have what we presume will be a normal school year. And that's one of my favorite things that this season does, is that it actually has just a cohesive school year. We've seen very, very little of the school up until this point. But obviously, that is not all this season is, and that is not all this season is going to be from this point. This is a thick boy of a season. Like, I am not kidding. Just the thickest boy of a season. This season has what I would call the A, B, and C plot. And although I'm calling them the A, B, and C plot, they're all, in their own ways, equally as important. I would say that the A plot is the mystery of finding out about this dead goddess, this forgotten goddess that is causing havoc and mayhem around Elmville through the bad guys of, a little bit of a spoiler here, but this entire video is a bit of a spoiler, obviously, through the bad guys of like Porter, Jason, the Rat Grinders. The B plot is the fact that Kristen Applebee's has basically become lazy when it comes to being like the prophet of her goddess Cassandra, because Kristen has never really taken any of her deities seriously, whether it be Helio, Yes, or now Cassandra. And the C plot ties in really, really closely to the B plot, and surprisingly the A plot, and it is the fact that Kristen Applebee's is also running for student body president in their senior year. Now, that doesn't seem like it would wrap up really nicely with the other plots, but what's really astounding about this season, in the fact that it's a big chunky boy like I said, is the fact that there's so many ridiculously intricate plot lines. There's not just the A, B, and C. There's the D, there's the E, the F, the so on and so forth plot lines that these characters discover as they're unfolding the big overarching mystery of this season. And they all tie in so incredibly and so perfectly that within the last episode, I'm thinking to myself, exactly how planned out is Dimension 20? Because we know that it's a bit planned out, obviously. They have all these sets done. Brennan has in his mind a place that they want to be. And I'm not saying that I think that it is all planned out. I am saying that I'm wondering just how planned out it is, but I honestly believe that Brennan has been playing with the Intrepid Heroes for so long. The Intrepid Heroes are honestly at this point such amazing top-tier D&D players that a mystery that has so many intricate parts like this just feels planned out.
So allow me to explain a little bit further. All right, so everything is so deeply interconnected in this that it got me wanting to dig a little deeper just to see the weird things that happened ever since the beginning of this, that by the end are perfectly wrapped up. So on a beat by beat, in just a couple moments, let me run you through all the things that happen in order for this to wrap up perfectly by the end of this show. So Ida and Fig are in a relationship, and Ida reconnects with her father, Arthur Eggfort. Ida and Arthur go on a time-traveling bonding vacation that takes Arthur out of the school for the remainder of the school year. Grix takes over as emergency backup principal at the same time that Kristen is neglecting her duties to her god. Kipper Lily is running for student body president. Kristen also runs for student body president, basically just out of spite. We find out that Maisie, who Fabian has a crush on, is the current student body president. During a fight, Cassandra, Kristen's goddess, gets corrupted by rage and chokes on a shrimp that knocks her out. During said battle, Cassandra is named and she dies with a blinding red light, and Rog Barkrock is named at the same time, somehow tying him to this. At the crazy party for Fabian and Kristen, we find out Buddy Dawn is the new cleric to the Rat Grinders after their last cleric mysteriously died. We also briefly meet Gertie and her honey, who will come into play later, believe it or not. Lydia Barkrock had info on Bakur the Pit Fiend, who they believe is behind the Rage Orbs and the red magic that came out of Cassandra because Rog was named. They find out about Oblivati Mori and the gods not being able to remind people of previously forgotten gods, even if the gods themselves remember. They then kill the Vulture King and get parts of him that grant abilities. They venture into the woods and discover the body of a teacher in Lucy Frostblade, the Rat Grinder's former cleric. They also discover a weird soil, very strange. In Falinal, Ratsusho Hole dug and revealed the name of a forgotten god they have been searching for all season, Ankarna, sibling of Ravina, twin giant deities of summer and winter. Cassandra and Ankarna were married at one point as well. Bobby Dawn becomes the new cleric teacher after the previous one died. They do the last stand where they are expected to die. During the last stand, using a part of the Vulture King that they happened to get because Kristen saw a vulture and was like, hey, let me fuck with it. They witness Kipper Lily kill Body Dawn. We then learn Jace has a Shatterstar scar on his chest. There is a problem brewing in the Mountains of Chaos. In said Mountains of Chaos, a legend lore reveals that the Cliffbreaker family betrayed Bakur and turned Ankarna into a goddess of war and wrath instead of summer. So it turns out Porter has been bad this entire time. Justice for Fig. They discover a principal is needed to change bylaws so that they can perform a summoning ritual, and in the absence of a principal, the student president can change the bylaws. And they discover that Porter has everything he needs to become the new incarnation, the weird rage soil, everything in Elmville filled with rage, and a protective shroud of the Nightmare King. During a final party to secure votes for Kristen, they get enough votes and have to deliver it to the school to show that Kristen is the new president of the student body. Cassandra, as the Nightmare King, is summoned by Cliffbreaker, and K2 uses divine intervention and says Blimey twice to let them pass when she is a giant cloud monster. At the school, the realm of Ankarna is being summoned into our world. Porter, the Rat Grinders, and Jace are trying to find a way to make someone other than Maisie or Kristen president to finish the ritual. Bakur is released from the gem that Lydia originally had in her. Porter attempts to control him unsuccessfully with the devil's honey from Gertie. K2 then farts and restores Cassandra. Oh, where the fuck was I? Who then gets Bakur to declare Jace an enemy of Ankarna. Ankarna, now freed, slices Porter in half, seeing his true wish to slay her when the devil's honey wears off. And then Kristen begins to worship the couple of Cassandra and Ankarna, so they both exist together, with Cassandra being revived and Ankarna existing and known once again. Now that I've calmed down from my rant and losing my mind a little bit, let's dive in to the more intricacies of this season. And the first thing I want to touch on is where these characters are now. Now, we know and love all of these characters. We have been watching them for years at this point. So that is part of the beautiful thing about this season. The dynamic of the intrepid heroes and the characters that they play is the best that I have ever seen up to this point, because we have in this world 2 years of relationship building and character building. We've watched these characters grow up. We've watched them go through high school. We've seen them on so many different adventures, and we know that so many different adventures have happened off screen that have created these lifelong bonds between them. We don't have to start from the very beginning with these characters not knowing each other. And I'm not saying that is bad. Obviously, the getting to know each other phase is one of my favorite parts. I remember vividly in the first episode of Fantasy High when Gorgug and Fabian meet, and Fabian punches Gorgug in the face because he's like, I'm gonna go punch the biggest guy out here like it's prison or something.
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. It's my first day. I guess it's everyone's first day.
Oh, it's your first day.
Do you want this metal flower?
I swing and hit him as fucking hard as I possibly fucking can.
But where are these characters now?
Adine Abenan, Elven Oracle, denim jacket, wearing cool kid. How do you get a job? Why am I asking you? Why
no idea.
Adine Abernat is the Elven Oracle, and part of the thing that I love about this season is that she's kind of reconnected with her older sister, and her older sister has become like a middle school teacher, crazy cat lady, but they've like trauma bonded over the shitty relationship that both of them have previously had with their parents. And Adine is going through this season on her own like little personal quest inside of the like
7 overarching quests I talked about as the Elven Oracle, and she's trying to get enough money because she's struggling to get through her wizard classes because it costs like dragon eggs and barrels of diamonds and shit. But she's like the prophet of elves, so people keep like showing up at her work and being like, hey, am I gonna get rich? How's my daughter gonna do in college? And bullshit like that.
I'm Fabian Seacaster. I'm the future of dance.
Dance isn't in the future.
What?
It's always right now.
Okay.
Fabian off-screen has become more of a bard than a fighter. And Lou Wilson plays this absolutely phenomenally and evolves Fabian into like this less like toxic masculinity character and more just this very confident and full of himself, but in like a merited, earned kind of way.
You leap forward, eat dirt. The hangman sprays gravel into your eyes. You fly under the van, barely on that first save, not getting crushed under the wheels for 10d10 damage.
Okay. And the way he leans into being a bard and this master of dance, but with that confidence and just this cool man swagger, slowly, but really not all that slowly, becomes the most popular kid in the entire school, to the point that he gets a golden neck tattoo of Maximum Legend. And a lot of the season actually banks on the fact that Fabian is so incredibly popular because all of these parties that are thrown at his house are very, very intricate to the plot points of this. And yeah, you can say that some of that was planned because obviously they already had the battle sets built out of Seacaster Manor, like flying through the sky and the shrimp jump and all like that. But at the same time, a lot of it also relied on roles and role playing.
Figure Faith is a archdevil lizard's paramour. Yes, it's part of my identity. Thank you.
Fig, I love Fig. I love Fig because Fig is Emily Axford, and I will die on the hill that Emily Axford is the all-time best Dungeons & Dragons player that has ever been born. I'm not the only one to say it. Brendan Lee Mulligan has also said it. He has also said that Emily Axford was sent from somewhere to torment him for life as a DM.
Emily is one of the best D&D players in the world, endlessly creative, so fun to play with. She was also sent from hell to kill me. Yes. You understand.
Yes. But she is, as always, reigning supreme as utter chaos. And also Hilda is back, and she is being hunted by an FBI agent of some kind. Great underarching plot.
Your name's Hilda, and you live at 22 Hilda Street and 22 Hilda Boulevard.
But Fig's utter chaos just always somehow melds perfectly in with the rest of the goings-on of a season. Usually when a character is like this in Dungeons & Dragons, they kind of throw a wrench into plans and make it difficult for a DM to actually do the plans that they have worked so hard on. But Fig is just a master role player, and not enough people really give her credit for the mysteries that she solves, the notes that she takes, and what she does for her party as a whole, while still being so incredibly fun and creative. Also, she's a paladin this season. So she is a bard, a warlock, and a paladin. She kind of took it as a joke, but then in the Last Stand fight, which I'll talk more about later because wow, The Last Stand, what an amazing entire episode. She leans into that kind of as a favor to Kristen and then becomes an absolutely amazing paladin. Somehow melds together being a bard and a warlock and a paladin. And also, I'm not sure if it's a joke or not, but it'd be really cool if she did kind of become a barbarian.
Gorgog is I'm just sort of worried. I'm going into a worry, yeah.
And then we have Gorgog, who has, again, off-screen become much more of an artificer than he is a barbarian. And his struggle throughout the season is with Porter, which, again, we find out is a bad guy. Justice for Fig. She knew from, like, what, episode 2 of Fantasy High or something crazy like that? Gorgog struggles the entire season with the fact that nobody thinks that a barbarian can be an artificer. And Porter makes him take like 4 years of school in one because he won't sign an MCAT, something that allows the students to multi-class. So Gorgog struggles with that all season and has to drop the owl bears. But in the end, he becomes like this brilliant artificer barbarian that somehow taps into the intelligence and the mathematician side of being an artificer to make being a barbarian and calculating the rage even better as a barbarian.
You literally see, as the heavy metal axe shivers in your hand, this incredible combination of a barbarian's battle axe and incredible artificer metallurgy. There is a wild moving of mass and physics, and the purple worm's giant neck literally is almost like strangled and pushed in by the force of gravity to become small enough, as it is like wrung by pure force, for you to hit it at its thinnest point and fully decapitate this massive purple worm.
It's hard to explain. As they've said in The Last Stand, he is an engineer, the player is not. I am also not an engineer, but I understand D&D.
Kristen is doing great.
If you're a cleric and you let your god die, that's a failure.
You're allowed to fail a certain number of classes each semester.
I just want to show...
And then we have Kristen, Allie Beardsley, who has, honestly, way too much stuff going on. I finished watching this, like, a week ago, and it is already starting to fall out of my head. If I had to define a main character of this season, I'd say it is Kristen Applebee's. In Fantasy High freshman year, the main character I think would be Riz Gutgak, because a lot of the storyline behind Fantasy High revolved around Riz. In this season, almost all of it revolves around Kristen Applebee's. The fact that her goddess Cassandra, who she's not paying enough attention to, and kind of her goddess begins to resent her because Kristen Applebee's throws herself into a presidential race that she really only starts to do out of spite for Cottonmouth Kettleball, and she throws herself into that race, and Cassandra's like, hold up, we only really have 2 worshipers, and one of them is a guy named Craig that... who gives a shit? And Kristen's like, yeah, but being president will definitely help this. And then Cassandra fucking dies. And the entire mystery revolves around finding out the name of this other forgotten god that Porter is trying to, like, release and become the new incarnation of. And it turns out Cassandra is intrinsically entwined with that goddess on Karna. And she also does have to become the student body president so that Porter cannot then become the incarnation of Ankarna. It's absolutely wild. You understand, if you've seen it, why I had to go on like a 5-minute tirade of the just bonkers mystery that somehow ties together. But it really all revolves around Kristen in some way.
Riz has graduated from briefcase kid to hipster nerd.
You have perfect grades, and that still might not be enough.
Pressure is kind of my thing.
And then, of course, you have Riz Gutgak, who, if I could just put it into a few short words, is somehow holding all these guys together. Now, the main bad guy of this season is kind of up for debate. It could be Porter, who is revealed towards the end of the season, has been a bad guy all along. It could also kind of a little bit be like Jace. Or in the beginning, it's kind of Grix, but then he dies pretty immediately by Fabian.
Bang! Lightning. Grix is destroyed. Perfect order. And just becomes parts on the ground.
But I would say the main bad guys, or at least the most fun ones in this season, are the Rat Grinders. The Rat Grinders are kind of like the mirror of the bad kids. They're another adventuring party within Arthur Eggfort's school, and they all kind of hate the bad kids because the bad kids have excelled beyond just tiny little quests being accompanied by teachers and are like some of the world's greatest adventurers that have saved the world multiple times, but they're also all kind of two-faced and likable. But then we find out at the end of this, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself, that everybody except Kit and Billy Cattleprod isn't really all that evil. They were just like succumbed to this devil's honey. One of my favorite moments in this season is when we find out that they are called the Rat Grinders because they have all gone out to the woods behind the school and just stomped on rats, kind of in the sense of when you're in World of Warcraft and you just kill boars in order to level up, like in that one episode of South Park.
That's why we need to just log in and stay in the forest, killing boars. Boars? There's lots of computer-generated boars in Warcraft that die with just one blow.
Dude, boars are only worth 2 experience points apiece. Do you know how many we would have to kill to get up 30 levels?
Yes. 65,340,285.
And they don't actually have any real-world adventuring experience. They've just XP grinded and min-maxed, and it drives Riz crazy. And holy shit, this clip is one of my favorite things that's ever come out of Fantasy High.
Stop biting me.
I mean, really props to Brennan Lee Mulligan for making these literal, like, school teenagers, these absolutely detestable characters that I openly hate and that I feel like everybody else did too. It's not an easy feat to take literal children and make you be like, yeah, you should probably drop them in lava and fucking kill them. Now, I kind of want to just go on and talk about the things that I love about this season. I've gone through in a step-by-step explained like the plot. I've given synopsis, talking about the characters. I just really kind of want to talk about why I love the season, because I went on record in the beginning of this and I said that I wholeheartedly believe that this is the best season of Dimension 20 out there. And I should back that up. Now, I touched on it a little bit, but the fact that this is already a world that we know and love and characters that we understand in depth really lends itself to a season that we haven't seen before. Only kind of in Unsleeping City, but not to the extent that we've seen this. It lends itself to them being able to seamlessly travel around not only the map, but the world. Like when they go to Falinel, and it never really has to be explained who the people are in Falinel, what the place is, because anybody that loves Fantasy High and Dimension 20 already knows about Falinel because of sophomore year. And then further into the locations, we have location callbacks like Mordred Manor and the ice cream parlor, and we have character callbacks like with Adine's sister and all the teachers. And we understand even these side characters deeply, because over the course of 3 seasons of like 60 episodes, we've spent, even with these minor characters like Jawbone, you know, like hours and hours with, like a full movie's length of time getting to know them.
And you see he points in a corner of the room you haven't looked in, and you see Jawbone the werewolf over there.
Jesus
gives you a surf's up.
Hey, what's going on? Fuck yeah, dude.
I give it back.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Good night.
Hey, fucking.
Welcome.
Dude, I got a job. Let's fucking fix kids.
So no time needs to be wasted introducing these new people, these new places, these new things, because it's all understanding, and then all we have to do is have the story and the character progression within this season. One thing it does dive deeper on, though, that I do really appreciate, that this is far and away the most time that we've ever actually spent in the school. In the first season, surprisingly little time was spent in the school. In the second season, it didn't even take place in Elmville for like 95% of the season. In this one, the school is a very important and intricate part of the plot. And they spend the vast majority of their time within that walls actually attending classes and communicating with the students. A great segue from that is into the next thing I love, which is I love the new mechanic of downtime that Brennan has introduced into this. It is something entirely different than I've ever seen in Dimension 20 or Dungeons & Dragons as a whole through all the actual plays that I watch and listen to, which, by the way, is a remarkable amount. Quite frequently, like every other episode, sometimes an entire episode is dedicated to the downtime. He goes back and forth between the characters and asks, okay, what would you like to focus on, like this week or this month? Because school time is passing. Would you like to focus on your grades? Would you like to focus on your relationships, popularity? Would you try and like to relax? Each character gets to go and do things outside of the party and outside of the group. And it allows for like a time travel and almost like a fast travel mechanic that makes sense, because you're doing parts of the story that would take weeks of time, months of time, and you're saying, all right, well, you're going to focus on this for a couple weeks, and now it makes sense why you're accomplishing so much in such a short span of time. And it allows these characters to travel around the map, because it doesn't really matter on like a time frame, because it's happening in such a large portion of time. So you're getting to explore Elmville more thoroughly and deeply, and you're getting more one-on-one time with these characters, but in a quick sense that doesn't leave all the other Intrepid heroes out for like half an hour. But then also with like the stress tokens that Brennan gives, that then they have to use that mechanic to make them roll at disadvantage because they're so stressed out in their teenage lives with with school, but also saving the world for a third time. And it adds in like kind of an element of kids on bikes, which Dimension 20 loves kids on bikes. And I think some of the greatest seasons are based around kids on bikes, like Misfits and Magic and Mentopolis come to mind as some of my all-time favorites. This season also has some of the best battles I've ever seen. And a lot of that, once again, has to do with the fact that this is the third season. They are, I believe, a 14th level. They're fighting like dragons and gods and like 15 monsters at once. They're casting spells that are absolutely destructive and deal hundreds of damage at a time. Their wizard is just phenomenal. Their cleric is actually making a difference on the battlefield, so on and so forth. In so many seasons, they are level 5, level 8, level 10. When you get up to level 14 as a DM, and again, credit to Brennan where credit is due. He's the greatest dungeon master out there. DMing 6 heroes at level 14 that understand the game as thoroughly as the heroes do is very difficult, because these are a group of powerful, powerful beings. But again, that lends itself to really, really interesting combat with powers and spells and attacks that we have never been able to see in Dimension 20 before.
10d8 for the smite, plus 4d8 for the booming blade, plus 2d8 for my base, plus 4d6 for the acid. And then that also, the booming blade, then he'll take extra damage if he moves?
Yeah.
For the smite? Okay. I'm rolling it on here.
Oh my fucking God.
That is 87 points of damage.
If it's not obvious, a lot of this I've been alluding to the final fight, but mostly The Last Stand. The Last Stand will probably forever be one of the greatest encounters I have ever seen. Just the amount of bad guys, of monsters, whatever, thrown at them at once, and the amazing clutch rolls and the team working together so cohesively because they know each other so well outside the game, but also inside the game. There's no metagaming needed in the communication between each other. And you have moments because of all of that, like when Fig embraces her paladin power and smites like a wyvern or a dragon, I can't remember off the top of my head, and deals a ludicrous amount of damage. I was on the edge of my seat watching 7 people talk on my screen. But then you have like interesting kind of wild fights, like the episode based around Baron of the Baronies when they're trapped inside like a liminal alternate dimension space. So you have like 2 different sides of very different fights. One that is just purely like power and skill, and the other one is that like a mind fucking maze kind of mystery within it. And that episode is like so far removed from the rest of the season, but it stands out in my head as one of the most memorable as well. This is Dimension 20, this is Dropout, and this is the Intrepid Heroes at, like I said, their most chaotic. So this season is also just incredibly, incredibly hilarious. You have K2, the simulacra of Kristen Appleby's, who is like the weird, straight English version of Kristen Appleby's that becomes basically one of the bad guys and also the bane of Brennan Lee Mulligan's existence. When Dimension 20 had announced Fantasy High junior year, they did like the interviews with every single cast member. And when they got to Allie Beardsley, they were talking about the fact that they did something that they weren't sure would cause Brennan to literally quit.
This season, Brennan said that he might quit because of a choice that I made. But really, jury's still out. Like, we'll see if he does quit. I haven't seen him around today, so I do hope he shows up.
And throughout the entire season, I, along with everybody else that I'm a fan of this, was like, what in the fuck did Allie do to Brennan? And when you find out that it was not just the one time that K2 rolled a clutch-ass nat 20 to do a divine intervention that Kristen had been struggling with all season long, said, blimey, I'm not sure you heard me, blimey, and then nat 20 to divine intervention to end the combat against the summoned Nightmare King in one of the final episodes, and then in the final episode, K2 again rolled another nat 20 and farted at the same time to like resummon Cassandra, the god that Kristen has been struggling to make real again, her deity. And Brennan was like, I'm done.
K2 doesn't know why, but she's being compelled to cast Dispel Magic. And she farts and says, blimey.
No.
Is it a crit?
Is it a crit? Is it a crit? Is it a crit?
It's a crit.
Oh my God.
Here's about to die.
She farts and says, blimey?
I don't need this anymore.
Zach, we need...
There's no fun. What's the fucking point?
I got in there.
Zach.
Why didn't you have Kristen, dude?
Brennan, go get some water. Zach, you got this.
And both of these times Zach took over. Zach has his own podcast, or he did in the past, where he's a DM. Please, Zach, if somehow you ever see this video, please DM. I'd love you or Murph. I know you're both busy guys, but Zach, please DM a season of Dimension 20. But Brennan's absolute struggle and hatred of K2 to the point where at the end, he's like, go away forever. And it's like, K2's probably never coming back. Why would he allow her back? Please do, though. And then we have, like, the Vulture Dimension, which I was, like, laughing so hard I thought I was going to wake up my wife and kids when I was watching that. When I was watching the moment of the Vulture Dimension reveal. The Vulture is a callback of both seasons of Fantasy High. But all the way back in season 1, when they were obsessed with just a tiny little set-piece vulture, being like, there's something suspicious about that vulture. And in this season, in all of the fight sequences, there's a little vulture on every single set. And Kristen, when Kristen should be fighting, is like, I'm going to go try and talk to that vulture. And when she communicates with the vulture, they get taken to the Vulture Dimension. And again, it ties into, like, what if none of them ever talked to the vulture? None of that would have ever happened. They had all these animations for the dome. They had an entire battle sequence and set built out for it. And the pieces of the vulture that they consumed were vital aspects to multiple parts of unraveling the mystery of this. So what if one of them just didn't talk to the vulture? And then you have Fig cursed with bad luck. The only downside of this season is we didn't have any Galir. Galir was sorely missed, but at least Fig was cursed with the bad luck of Galir. Galir then got amazing luck, became incredibly rich, went on a vacation with Fabian's mom, which, by the way, they're getting married and having a kid. That's a whole other bag of worms. That's hilarious. But Galir was sorely missed, but seeing Fig have her father's luck, amazing. And then, of course, I talked about it very briefly when I was doing my little rant earlier. But then we have rats that show hole digging down and discovering the name of Ankarna, the goddess that they have been searching for, that this entire mystery of this whole season is revolved around. It was a bunch of slutty rats. Slutty rats did it. Rats that show hole. You can't beat that. And then finally we have all the callbacks in the first episode, which was absolutely amazing. Like Squeam and the others I can't think of right now because they're not actual characters. And when I sat down and I watched that first episode, and they're doing all those callbacks that didn't exist, but it was to the season that was never seen with the Night Yorb, I paused and I was like, it's been a long time since I listened to sophomore year. Am I lost? Do I have to do it again? And literally I went straight on Reddit and everybody else was like, no, this is fake. It got me too. But it was so hilarious. From the very beginning of that first episode, it was pure chaos, but pure perfection. So, I look forward to every single season of Dimension 20 so much. I've talked about this in the past, but Dimension 20 means a lot to me. And, in a pretty sentimental way. And I know this is going to sound strange because it is just a Dungeons & Dragons show, but it, fills, this void of Dungeons & Dragons in me that I've had for a long time. Years ago, my wife and I were a big part of a D&D group. We met every single Saturday at 8, 9 o'clock at night. And we played sometimes to 3 in the morning, but we didn't care because it was the time of our lives. And it was before all of us had young kids and important jobs and kind of separated. And it's been years now, and honestly, I don't really have communication with anybody that I played with anymore. And I haven't played Dungeons & Dragons in 6 years right now. So
I don't mean this in like a parasocial way that a lot of people might think I do, but Dimension 20, for that reason, means a lot to me. It's like this and Baldur's Gate 3 that fill this D&D void that I have. And I've looked forward, and everybody, it seems like, has looked forward to no season more than junior year. And now I look forward to no season more than I look forward to senior year. This season was Dimension 20 at its absolute finest, at like the peak of quality that I have seen in Fantasy High, but in Dimension 20 as a whole as well. The things they have done with the dome is absolutely nuts. And yeah, it's not a dome anymore, but who cares? It was a fire hazard, and they were in a warehouse at 3 in the morning with a crown of candy, which, by the way, is super impressive. Like, my mind used to be blown in A Crown of Candy, which is my all-time favorite season, maybe surpassed by this one. I have to kind of let it gestate a little bit and see if it is. But A Crown of Candy has been my all-time favorite season for a while now. And my mind was blown when I saw them like change the colors of the dome for what area of the world they were in. And on this one, it goes above and beyond. Like every single season, you seem to see more and more creative things go on. Like what they had with all the animations for the vulture dimension, or with the hoot growl flashing on the screens, or like when Brennan Lee Mulligan had his face on every single triangle, showing the moment that was kind of revealed that Porter was evil all the way back in sophomore year. It's very, very impressive, the production that they have came from Fantasy High freshman year. And I'm not saying freshman year was bad. It wasn't. It was truly amazing. Like, I've also said that I personally can't get myself into Critical Role for the same reason that I had to listen to sophomore year instead of watching it. It's just the production quality, in my opinion, leaves something lacking. It's not an insult to Critical Role by any means. I've again consumed some of Critical Role in like podcast format. It's just really not for me. This is just riveting to watch, and every single season it gets better and better and better. On top of that, the Intrepid Heroes have never been more with their characters than they are with this one. And we have never been more invested in characters than we are with this one. We already have, going into junior year, like 90 plus hours invested into this world and these characters. And now we have upwards of like 130 to 140 with them. And because of that, they are so one with these characters and the progression that they have made in their lives and in this world, that from the very beginning when you jump in, it's so enthralling. And for that reason, again, senior year will just be so bittersweet, you know? Because I'm just so invested in this world of Fantasy High. So much more than I really could be with like any other fantasy world other than like deep books, because I've just stayed in it with these characters for so long. And that's why when senior year comes out, it'll be so incredibly bittersweet, because it might be so many more years from now until we see it. And it'll probably be the conclusion of this world and of these characters. I don't know if they're going to like do like maybe like a season 5 where they're in college. I don't know if there's like an adventuring university they can go to, but probably not. It'll probably be the end of the road for them. And I hope they do like some kind of epilogue just to kind of wrap them up nicely and sweetly. But even if they do that, it'll probably be the end of the road. And it'll be so incredibly like double-edged sword, because it'll be so satisfying seeing the end of this journey, but so sad as well to leave the world and the Intrepid Heroes that we have seen from Fantasy High, the very first season of Dimension 20. And this was all like super like sentimental, which is kind of weird coming at the end of this video I do. I don't normally do stuff like this speech right here, you know? But, you know, honestly, that's how I feel about this. And I feel like there's probably other people out there that feel similarly. Time Quangle differs a bit differently from every other campaign because it is not a main Intrepid Hero adventure. It is not a side quest. These are actually the taped live recordings that they did when they were on tour. Being such a massive fan of Dimension 20, it has been a dream of mine to go see them live. I tried so hard to go see them in Madison Square Garden. In 2025, if they're on tour,
I will guaranteed 100% go see a live performance of them. But until then, Time Quangle is the best I'm going to get, and honestly, I'm not upset. It is so incredibly well done. It gives the atmosphere and the feel of the live performance. You feel how the crowd is enjoying it. It is obvious that everybody is having so much fun doing these little mini campaigns for the live show, and I'll get into it more later, but one thought that I had while watching this is that these live shows are like the purest form of Dungeons and Dragons I have seen in quite a while. So for those of you that don't know what a time quangle is, it really is, like Brennan said, quite simple. It is a quangle in time. No, but seriously, Time Quangle is the live show that Dimension 20 put on. And as Brennan puts it in the beginning of every single one of the shows, not only does the audience not know who they're playing, they don't even know who they're playing. So they roll bingo balls in a cage for the setting and all the characters. And through some multiversal quangle in time, the characters that they choose, whether it be from Never After, Crown of Candy, Fantasy High, Unsleeping City, so on and so forth, they get quangled and sent in an interdimensional mission to a different world. Sometimes they stay in the same world. Like a couple times you had characters that were in their own, and a couple of times it was actually really cool. You had characters quangle again and transform into another character to help be a guide within that world. So everything in the world and every single media is multiverse. Marvel started it, and then everybody started following suit. Dimension 20 followed suit, and usually I'm upset about it. Usually I think, okay, find something original, but now Dimension 20. I hope Time Quangle is here to stay. I hope they do more of this, whether it be in a live setting or in the dome itself. I wanted to take a moment and tell you all the different characters and all the different settings that you see across the 4 episodes of Time Quangle. Now, I'm not going to go crazy in depth about those settings or characters. I'll go in a little bit more later, but I will talk a little bit about a couple things that I really want to. So the very first setting that we have is Never After. You have Murph playing Big Berry 6, Allie playing Liam Wilhelmina, Emily playing Yilfa Snorgelson, Zach Oyama playing Ricky Matsui, Siobhan Thompson playing Rowan. Then in episode 2, it goes to A Crown of Candy. You have Murph once again playing Big Berry 6, Allie playing Margaret Encino, Emily playing Sophie Bikes, Zach Oyama playing Gorgug, Siobhan playing Rowan. And then in episode 3, we go back to A Crown of Candy. Murph plays Cugrash, Allie plays Pete, Emily plays Sundry Sydney, Zach plays Norman, Siobhan plays Adine, Lou plays Fabian. This is the first one where we have Lou, and honestly, Lou is sorely missed in the first 2 episodes. You don't realize just how much of an asset Lou is to the Intrepid Heroes until he's gone. Please never go away again, Lou. And then lastly, you have Never After. Murph plays Cody Walsh, Allie plays Margaret, Emily plays Fig, Zach plays Gorgug, Siobhan plays Adine, and Lou plays Pinocchio. Now, one thing you'll notice in those is that there's a lot of repeats. You only for a setting have Never After and A Crown of Candy. I would have loved to have seen a few more settings in there. I hope that they do more of these. Like if they do Time Quangle for every single tour, that would be amazing, and we get like Time Quangle season 1 and 2 and 3 and so on, just like we have with like Unsleeping City and especially Fantasy High. It would be so cool because we only got to see Never After and A Crown of Candy. Think of how amazing it would be to see like A Crown of Candy characters in literally any other world, and they're all confused why they can't like eat buildings or whatever. And then there was also quite a few repeats. Like we had Margaret Encino a couple of times, and we had Big Berry 6 a couple of times. I would have loved to have seen more, but I can't complain too much. This is like a crazy experience within Dimension 20. So all of these episodes are the one-shots, and they're honestly very, very loose on plot. I mean, they're only up there for a couple of hours. There's absolutely no cuts in it, whereas in Dimension 20, you might not see it, but there's definitely cuts in there. Whereas in Dimension 20, I have talked about how it doesn't seem like Brennan and Abria and the other guest DMs that they have necessarily railroad people to where they're going. It is not 100% a sandbox campaign either, obviously, because these are staged in advance. They have the miniatures and the battle sequences already planned out, already built. They know where the campaign is going. Well, not they. Brennan knows where the campaign is going. And I want to be careful here because I'm not insinuating at all that these are staged, that they're scripted. They're not. but the characters do allow themselves to be kind of nudged in the right direction, and Brennan does have a plan in place and a schedule for when that plan has to work out. You know what I mean? In Time Quangle, you don't have that at all. And like I said, the plots are so incredibly loose. Now, geniusly, they all involve Arthur Eggfort, because if you're going to have a time quangle, I don't feel I actually have to explain what a quangle is, obviously.
Time quangle. We all know what a time quangle is.
Yeah, I studied it.
We studied it.
We understand it for sure.
But if you're going to have a time quangle, Arthur Eggfort has to be involved in this multi-dimensional rift in the quangle. But yes, while Arthur Eggfort is involved in some kind of way, and always very humorous while he's in it, the plots themselves are hilarious. Like in one of them, they have to get the heart of a dragon to feed Peppermint Preston, and I guess that solves the problem and they can all go home. In another one, they have to arrange a marriage, and in one of them, I've thought about it so much, and I think the main thing that they have to do is eat cheese.
Golguk, can you hear me?
Yeah, Principal Eggfort, we can hear you.
Cheese.
Cheese?
Did you say
cheese? You just say cheese. Is that
Sir,
it?
we need you to speak in actionable items.
But obviously these little one-shots have some of the most hilarious moments that have ever come out of Dimension 20. When I said that the cast up there is having more fun than I've really seen them have in quite a while, I mean it. Not to say that they don't enjoy themselves in Dimension 20, but it's just contagious how much fun they're having, and the funniest moments come out of these one-shots where you don't have any serious elements. Like A Crown of Candy, in my opinion, is the most humorous campaign, but it also made me, a grown-ass man, cry twice. Some of my favorite moments are when Arthur and Ida Eggfort are talking through Hansel and Gretel.
Hansel and Gretel each suddenly, their heads kick back, their eyes glow white, and each of them begins to speak at the same time in a voice that you don't recognize from either of them.
Good evening. If you are listening to this message, my name is Arthur Eggfort.
Sophie Bikes thinking that the entire thing is one staged play and eating hand sanitizer the entire time because Emily Axford is playing Sophie Bikes, and it's just an Emily Axford thing to make your character do. But also you have some amazing character pairings that you wouldn't normally see. Like Ricky Matsui and Big Berry 6 having a himbo bromance is such an obvious pairing, but I would have never thought about it until I saw them doing it on stage. And Fabian and Pete having a masculinity off where they're each trying to alpha male each other is not something I thought I'd ever see, obviously, but it's something that once it's on screen, I'm like, yeah, this makes sense and it's fucking hilarious and amazing. But then also you get to see characters that you haven't seen in forever. Like Liam Wilhelmina is my all-time favorite Dimension 20 character. Getting to see Allie play Liam Wilhelmina again was really, really amazing. I actually, when I was done watching Time Quangle, I went back and I started to watch A Crown of Candy again. I'm sorry. The next campaign that I'm going to cover is going to take a little bit longer because I got to get through all of A Crown of Candy again. Sue me. But I went back and I watched all of A Crown of Candy again because I was like, God, I forget how just awesome and weird at the same time Liam is. Same goes for seeing Norman again and Cugrash. But then you get to see a never before played character. For a little bit of background, A Crown of Candy is Candyland in Game of Thrones. So A Crown of Candy is the most brutal campaign that has ever happened on Dimension 20. Player characters actually died, a couple of them. So everybody had to make a backup character. In Time Quangle, you actually get to see a backup character played by Allie that you never got to see in A Crown of Candy, which is, for a big Dimension 20 nerd like myself, so fucking cool. So I want to touch on a couple things that I said at the beginning a little more thoroughly here. In the beginning, I said that this was the purest form of Dungeons & Dragons, and I really mean it. Not to say that Dimension 20 isn't pure Dungeons & Dragons. That's not what I'm saying. It is very, very good. It is my favorite actual play out there, as is obviously the fact that my channel kind of revolves around Dropout and has a lot of Dimension 20 content these days. But they are having fun like you do when it's 2 a.m. and you're 5 hours deep into a campaign with your friends sitting around a table that you've been playing for 3 years. It's just the vibe of it. The vibe of it's immaculate. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it is. For example, Allie, and of course it's Allie, hits a crazy clutch nat 20 on something that Brennan put a DC 500 on. And not only does the entire cast go crazy and Brennan puts his head in his hands, but the whole crowd absolutely loses their mind, justifiably. And that is just something that when you're watching Dimension 20, I have belly laughs. I get emotional. A couple of times with Crown of Candy, it actually brought me to tears. I mentioned that. That's a real thing. I'm not lying. But you don't have moments like that you experience with a crowd. You're just, in my case, sitting on my couch after my kids go to bed, experiencing it by myself, and it's great. But this just brings it to a whole nother level. It is a dream of mine to see Dimension 20 live. But honestly, until then, this is a really, really good thing to hold me over, because it gives you the feeling that live performance does at home, and that's crazy.